Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I will be steering you through 3 hours of breaking news, challenging views and top-flight topical debate. Busy show. Get involved. Get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000. Or WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I guarantee I'll play your message out. It's Tuesday, February the 18th. Here's what's coming up. Kemi Badenoch blasts the poisonous woke ideology that her clapped-out husk of a party allowed to happen. Successive Conservative Prime Ministers asleep at the wheel while this concerted attack on Kemi's beloved traditional British values succeeded in consigning them to the scrap heap of cultural history. Kemi moaning about migrants weaponising the European Convention on Human Rights, the ridiculous club that she does not want to leave. Why? 0344 499 1000. Just like the migrant crisis, pervasive wokery is the Tories' fault. Do you want to forgive them? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, more crazed spending on woke garbage as it is revealed that, among other madnesses, taxpayers funded a university study of TikTok dancing, a probe into intersectional inclusion, queer animal research, and an AI program to help make companies more trans-friendly. Are you happy that our brilliant politicians are spraying our money around like this? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, Corporal Keir playing soldiers, even though he hasn't got any, and pretending he's best mates with Donald Trump when the president clearly thinks the useless British Prime Minister is just another European woke loser, which is just about right, isn't it? Starmer doesn't seem to realise that when JD Vance roasted cowering Euro leaders for their disgraceful attacks on free speech last week, he meant him. He meant Britain. He meant you, Starmer. And where was two-tier when the Americans and Russians launched Ukraine peace talks in Saudi Arabia? In Paris, at Macron's sulky so-called emergency summit, moaning with the rest of the EU mob who can't quite believe that no one wants their indecisive input, as if to prove that this bunch of waffling windbags' inherent dysfunctionality is a problem. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz stormed out in a huff over Starmer's plans to send British troops to keep the peace in Ukraine. Don't worry, Olaf, we haven't got any troops. But the squabbling Brussels gang, let's face it, they couldn't agree what day of week it is. In other news, how the woke mind virus has destroyed the police and turned them into a simpering bunch of gormless Guardian readers. An accused paedophile rapist addressed as she and her in court while the learned judge and barristers wade through nonsense about an alleged woman attacking her victim with her penis. It's not her penis, it's his penis. He's a bloke, for God's sake. Don't you think that this ludicrous, intelligence-insulting claptrap has got to stop? 0344 499 1000. Plus, another woke disaster as the BBC's 60-year-old children's sci-fi drama Doctor Who teeters on the edge of oblivion, ruined by absurdly right-on storylines that have alienated viewers and sent viewing figures plummeting. Is time running out for the Time Lord? 0344 499 1000. All that and so much more, so don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. let's spend Tuesday night together. And Tuesday, my favourite night, because I go straight over to columnist for here we go, The Sun, The Sunday Times and The Spectator, and now also a presenter on Times Radio, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. every Saturday. A very good listen. I very much recommend it. Welcome to the show, Rod Little. Hi, Rod.
Nice to see you, mate. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure. Well, let's talk about Kemi Badenoch. I'm going to let you off all of these Ukraine police talks. Let's talk philosophically. Kemi at this ACR conference in London, a kind of meeting of right-wing minds, she blasts the poisonous woke ideology that she says is destroying traditional British values. There's something in what she says. The trouble is that this poisonous woke ideology has been allowed to take hold, to take a vice-like grip of Britain, in my view, thanks to the Tories. You know, Cameron, May, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, and now her, frankly. They just let this rise and rise and rise, and I think probably if she wants to try to say that the Tories have stood always against this wokery, I always remember what I would say was probably a low point in Conservative Party history. Penny Mordaunt, HMS Mordaunt, standing in the House of Commons, booming to the fellow MPs, "A trans woman is a woman." No, Penny, a trans woman is not a woman. A trans woman is a man. That, I think, sums up where the Tories have gone wrong. And I think it's like the migrant crisis. You know, she goes, "Oh, we've got to solve the migrant crisis." Well, you caused it. The Tories caused it. And now she's talking about wokery. I think the Tories are responsible.
I think that's absolutely right. I think with the case with Penny Mordaunt, there was a personal element involved. There was someone in her family, I think, who had a large todger, but didn't advertise the fact very much. With Kemi, there were a few in the Conservative Party over that period who kind of nudged towards saying the right sort of sensible things on these woke issues. Kemi was one of them. Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, all kind of came close. But the truth is, it was an act of cowardice, pure cowardice on the part of the Conservative Party over that period. They were scared of what would happen if they told the truth about all these woke issues. And those woke issues, number one, as you correctly identified, a trans woman is not a woman, it's a man. Now, I think that whilst the vast majority of the population believe that trans people should be treated with respect and dignity and so on, that at least 75% do not believe that a trans woman is a woman. They believe in the science, as any normal person would. And I suspect that's true of the Conservative Party, maybe even higher within the Conservative Party. I think it's the same issue, again, as decolonisation, for example. And the overreach as well, which we're going to be talking about later, of LGB ideology, never mind LGBTQI, but the idea of queer animals. I mean, I'm always up for having a look at a few queer animals. That's one of my hobbies. I go around and say, look, he bats for the other side. If I see a pigeon, give me another pigeon one.
That seagull, obvious.
Oh, a seagull, yeah, hop off, mate, hop off. Yeah. But I do think that 75% of the population has always thought this. And yet our country has been caught up in a number of institutions which are led by stupid liberals, and most of those stupid liberals are still there. They're not in America, they've got rid of them. And I think this is true of Europe as well, that this has been driven by a tiny minority, and that it's pure cowardice on the part of parties such as the Conservatives in not standing up to it. And, I don't know about classical liberalism. Nobody really knows what classical liberalism is anymore, but I think I know what she means. She's thinking, more of Gladstone than than Ed Davey, I think, is what she's thinking of. Or at least I hope she is. Otherwise, she's on a one-way ticket to the booby hatch.
Yeah, if Ed Davies her political hero, the Tories are in much bigger trouble than we thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you know, it really was a case of cowardice.
The Tories, ever since Cameron started all of this, and they all inherited his mantle, it was that they were so scared of Labour that they tried to turn themselves into Labour light. What they didn't realise, their profound mistake, was actually there are millions of natural Conservatives out there who wanted to be able to vote for Conservatives. Instead, you got these kind of Lib Dem Greenie type people like Cameron and Boris Johnson and God knows what Theresa May was, but they did not offer Tory voters, the chance to vote for a Tory party.
And it's been hugely damaging, not just within this country, where these people are still in positions of power, where institutions are still paying Stonewall to come round schools and health trusts, and promulgate their odious and stupid programme of equity and what it means to be trans and all this rubbish. It's also been international, that we have lost so much in the eyes of the world, Western Europe. And it ends up being people we don't like very much, such as Vladimir Putin, talking the truth on these issues. And people listen to that and they think, well, come on, he's right about that, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. What about a less sort of prosaic issue when she talks about, in her speech today at the ACR, that the migrants have weaponised the ECHR. Well, they have, or more to the point, their lawyers have, and continue to do so on an infuriating daily basis also. You know, we've heard all these recent cases, you know, chicken nuggets and my husband can't go to the Caribbean because it's too hot for him. All the judges going, yeah, fair enough, you can stay then. You know, paedophile rapists coming out of jail and being allowed to stay because they've got a right to their family life. Yes. The immigration lawyers and the migrants have weaponised the ECHR. The easiest way for us to deal with this, if we want to plough our own furrow in the future, would of course be to leave the ECHR, which wouldn't mean we abrogate human rights. We form our own human rights legislation. We just don't have to do what this foreign court tells us. But she doesn't want to leave the ECHR. So she's attacking migrants for weaponising the ECHR, but she wants to stay in the ECHR. Mixed messages from Ms. Badenoch, I would suggest.
Yes, I mean, I think we should leave the ECHR, but I believe that the original intention behind the ECHR, and presumably Kemi Badenoch thinks the same, was a good one. The problem is, there is no way in hell that the ECHR meant for a paedophile who'd been sentenced to prison for 18 months should not be sent back to his country because his mum might be cross with him. There is no way that that was in the intention of the people who drafted that legislation. And I think the real problem, yes, obviously the lawyers, there are always lawyers. Lawyers are a huge problem, and we've got to de-lawyer our society somehow and bring it back to democracy rather than judiciary. But the real problem is the judges. And it's what I was saying before, that we still have these cretins in place, the ones who decide that Extinction Rebellion are absolutely right to hold up traffic and delay people's journeys because they're right, really, aren't they, about the planet?
It's the planet. It's the planet, isn't it? You know,
it's the planet, isn't it? Yeah. But it's an absurdity that these people are in these jobs, and every time we hear about one of these cases, and you and I talked about a load of them last week, Kev. Mm-hmm. When we hear about these, don't forget, most of them are done by judges in private. We never get to learn the name of the judge. They should be sacked. Get rid of them. We need a kind of Trumpian purging of the Orgian stables to really, really mix up a bunch of metaphors there. But we need a real purging of the people, particularly in the judiciary, particularly the judges, but elsewhere in the Arts Council, in the National Trust. You know, we need to get rid of these people because they are making our country a laughingstock, and 75% of the population simply has no time for them at all.
I think that's a conservative estimate, small c. I'd say it's a lot higher than that. I think all this wokery is completely alien to the vast, vast majority of everyone who lives here. And I'm talking about 95, 96, 97%.
Quite possibly.
Let me ask you this before we go to break, Rod. When last week we had one judge who was called Hugo Norton Taylor. He's the one who decided that when a family of 6 Gazans, Palestinians, applied for refugee status in Britain to be allowed to come here, if you like, as asylum seekers, that they should be allowed to come here on the basis that they're Ukrainians, because he used specific legislation specifically designed for people from Ukraine escaping that war. In fact, technically, they were not entitled to that legislation at all, but Hugo Norton Taylor decided that they would, and effectively lowered the drawbridge for all 2 million Palestinians to be able to come to live in Britain if they fancied it. Were you surprised to learn, subsequent to that bizarre, freakish decision, that Hugo Norton Taylor's father is an 82-year-old lifelong Guardian journalist called Richard Norton Taylor, who campaigns tirelessly for Palestine against Israel? Were you surprised to learn that family detail?
Not wildly surprised. Not wildly surprised. And I do know of this man. He was nicknamed at the Guardian because of the way he conducted himself as Richard Naughty Trousers.
Oh, really?
That's how it was known.
I think we better leave it hanging there, if I can put it that way.
I won't go any further.
I just made it worse, didn't I?
Yeah, you did really.
Listen, we're going to break. One more point. You want to?
Yeah, he should be sacked. I mean, the guy should be sacked. Yeah, he misread the law. As it happens, I think Sir Keir Starmer was quite good on this issue and said we won't be letting them in.
Yeah.
You know? And this is what we'll come to later. Sorry, just really quickly.
Yeah, go on.
I think Starmer could actually, as a pragmatist, could actually play the anti-woke card rather better than the Tories have done. You know, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him doing it.
Oh, I think in desperation, Rod, you might be right. I don't think it comes naturally to him. But that guy, what I think is emerging very clearly is that guy will do anything to hang on to power. Anything. So you're right. If he becomes the shining knight of anti-woke armor, in anti-woke armor, he'll go for it. I think you're right. We'll be talking about more crazed wokery when we come back, this ludicrous spending that these politicians do on our behalf. So stay tuned for that.
Well, Keir Starmer is a desperate Prime Minister in search of a good war, knowing entirely well that it is a completely fake proposal. Keir Starmer knows completely well that you can't send some kind of raggle-taggle gypsy crew of willing volunteers from around Europe to go to Ukraine to, as he puts it, be peacekeepers, because there's no structure within which to do that. Right. Who would command them?
Across the UK, DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with prolific columnist and, of course, presenter on Times Radio, Rod Liddle. I nearly called you Rod Stewart there.
That's all right.
You're like Rod Stewart without the money, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So yesterday, The Sun, to its credit, revealed some of this nonsense that we were spending our £15 billion foreign aid budget on. By the way, guess who's the chairman of the Foreign Aid Committee that sends all this money, you know, for shrimp research in Bangladesh and intersectional conferences in Kenya. Guess who the chairman of the Foreign Aid Committee is? The person who kind of permits all this money to go on these ludicrous causes. You'll once again be amazed to learn it's Emily Thornberry.
Of course it is. I thought you were going to say Velma from Scooby-Doo for a minute.
Well, same difference. Let's talk about, but back home, The Sun has done a 1-2. So today, they've exposed some of the crazed wokery spending that we sort of commit here, including 200 grand on a study at Coventry University on ontology and the ownership of internet dance. So it was basically a study of TikTok dancing and how it changed over the period of the lockdowns. We spent £1.1 million at Sheffield University on a very important probe into intersectional inclusion. Exeter University got £250,000 for a project to learn all about queer animals. And so on and so forth. And also we funded an investment into a study on how AI, artificial intelligence, could help companies be more trans-friendly. So there's 8 billion quid's worth of this claptrap last year. I mean, these people, these MPs, they're sitting there ticking this off. Yeah, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. You know, it's hilarious, but it's also a serious scandal, isn't it?
It is a scandal, and it's a scandal for two reasons. Firstly, because, as we've discussed before, nobody believes in this crap. Nobody believes in it. They all know it's rubbish, you know? But the more crucial point for us at the moment is that we are behaving as if it was 25 years ago and we actually had a bit of money.
Yeah.
And we don't have a bit of money, you know, and we don't have any money to pay. We don't have sufficient money to pay the number of people who can't be asked to work for a living, for a start, you know. And it really is about time that, aside from getting rid of all the woke stuff, we started saying what the guy in Argentina has been saying to his people, which is, I'm sorry, we don't have any money. That is what we've got to start saying. We've got to start saying that when people ask for benefit increases, or indeed keeping benefits as they are, paired to inflation and so on, no, we don't have any money. If you want more money, go and get a job. You know, we have got to do that. And we've got to say, do we need to know more about queer animals? You know,
well, in my case, do I need to know anything about queer animals? I wasn't aware of the syndrome, but apparently we're going to find out all about it due to important investment by.
No, you won't. No, but that's the other thing. You won't find anything out about it.
That's true. Whatever happens to these studies? What happens to them? We never learn about it.
I tell you what the problem is. Is that they head off in a very anti-scientific manner in order to prove their own ideology. And I'm afraid the truth is that there's very, very little homosexuality between animals. I know because I talk to animals, Kevin, yes. And they've assured me of this, that most of them are God-fearing heterosexuals.
But they're not transphobic, to be fair. They're not homophobic.
They're not transphobic.
And not homophobic,
no.
Yeah.
But
they're quite liberal, aren't they, most animals?
They're liberal, but they're sensible, Kevin, and they believe in the healing power of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's but no, you won't find out the truth from them. Because they are biased studies. They are studies which set out to prove what they want to prove, which is the opposite of what science should be doing. And I'll be talking to Richard Dawkins about this on my programme on Saturday morning.
Okay, and what are you edging towards for your lead in the Specky or the Sun this week?
I've written, for the Spectator, I've written about how J.D. Vance didn't go far enough. I thought it was a great speech by Vance.
But I'm glad you brought that up, and I thought it was just mesmerising. You know, he's a brilliant man, and unless Trump goes badly wrong, and it doesn't look like he's going to, we're talking about the next president of the United States without a shadow of a doubt, and a damn good one he will be. But what I've found strange since that speech, immediately, Frank Gardner on the BBC writing, the left, at whom his speech was directed, immediately I'll say, what a bizarre speech. Well, how weird.
Indeed.
Bizarre.
That's
20 minutes. It wasn't bizarre. I think it was game-changing. He knew exactly what he was doing, and the left are acting like he's some kind of weirdo who delivered some kind of speech that was completely irrelevant. It was high time that speech was made, and you could tell all those EU leaders could not believe it.
Well, no, but it was their effrontery which so enraged me. They sat there as Vance told them that the EU had been undemocratic, clamped down on freedom of speech and discriminated against right-wing parties. They've just cancelled the election in Romania because the party they didn't like won. And indeed, Thierry Breton, this fat, puffed-up, arrogant French commissioner, has said they'll do the same thing in Germany if AfD win. This has been going on for 25 years, the discrimination against populist parties of both the right and the left. They've penalised countries like Poland, which have dared to challenge the EU or put their own policies into effect. They're considering blackmailing Hungary into voting for more Ukraine aid. They've had a go at Slovakia. They've told Austria that the Freedom Party shouldn't lead the coalition. They are the most undemocratic. They are on a par. They're probably not quite on a par with the USSR, but they're not terribly far off.
I'll tell you, what did you... Keir Starmer, ever since then, admittedly he wasn't in the audience. David Lammy, the alleged Foreign Secretary, and John Healey, the Defence Secretary, they were in the audience. Keir Starmer seems to have interpreted J.D. Vance's speech as something not directed at him, but the rest of the European leaders. In actual fact, Keir, if you take the trouble to watch the speech, he actually veers off for almost a full 5 minutes to launch a serious attack on the assaults on freedom of speech in Britain.
Yeah, he does.
So Keir Starmer, though, is, not me. I'm the bridge between America and Europe. No. Trump and Vance think that Keir Starmer and his crew are the epitome of everything that's wrong with Europe.
Well, sure. But again, I hate to say this, to give that adenoidal robot credit for a moment, at least staying or attempting to stay in a neutral position between Europe and the USA is better than being, on the side of Europe. And again, I say that this is an opportunity for Sir Keir Starmer to say, hey, maybe they've got a point on some of this stuff. and if he were able to do that, and it's easier for Labour to do it than the Tories in a way. If you were able to do that, we might have a better relationship with the USA, and we might end some of this woke absurdity which we have, and the lack of freedom of speech. Absolutely.
So slowly but surely, perhaps, just maybe, Keir Starmer will creep up on a kind of common sense standpoint. I mean, he's really getting places when it comes to trans women. He now believes that 99% of people with penises are men. So he's only got another 1% to go, and he'll hit the truth.
Oh well, hang on. No, he's probably right about that. I mean, I think it's less than 1%. I think it's 0.2% of people who are genuinely into sex. I don't mean they like sex. I mean they're intersex.
Yeah.
So he's quite possibly right about that. I mean,
That's not why he's saying it, Rod. That's not why he's saying it.
No, it's not why he's saying it. But nonetheless, we are, 2 years on from where the poor bloke didn't know a todger from a minge, if I can put it like that. I don't know. Probably can't, actually.
Yeah, you probably can't put it like that, but what the hell you just did.
Yes,
but little steps, you never know. Give it about another 100 years, we might have a good Prime Minister in Keir Starmer. But anyway, Rod, great to talk to you as always. We'll talk again next week. That was the incomparable Rod Liddle, columnist at The Sun, The Sunday Times, The Spectator, and now a fellow presenter on Times Radio, 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. every Saturday morning. Recommend that show. Next up is Tim Montgomery with more of today's rather eventful events. That next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is...
Welcome back. Well, for the next half an hour, I'm joined by, it says here, I don't think this is any good, he's the founder of Conservative Home, Tim Montgomery. Well, the Conservatives are no longer his home, as you may have noticed. He's gone, switched. I'm not saying defected, I don't like that term.
Yeah, defector always sounds defective.
It sounds like you're a traitor. Yeah. No, he's switched to the Reform UK Party because I think he feels it's more spiritually his political home these days. And the Tories... an interesting spectacle. We'll maybe talk about them in a little while. Just talking to Rod Liddle about Kemi Badenoch's speech, having a go at the woke mind virus that's infecting every area of British society. Well, that reminds me of her saying, this migrant crisis, we've got to solve it. Well, you lot started it, and you also started the woke virus, or at least you were asleep at the wheel, and you let it pervade every element of our society. So it's another case, another example of this Tory leader saying, look, this is terrible, without conceding it's her party's fault. But perhaps we'll come on to that in a little while. Let's talk about specifics first. Keir Starmer. Right, he's sort of trying to pretend that somehow or other his invitation to the American and Russian peace talks in Saudi Arabia on Ukraine must have got lost in the post or something. You know, I'm the bridge between Europe and them. No, you're not. But then he's also talking about sort of putting boots on the ground to keep the peace in Ukraine, which did strike me as, no real need to say that yet. The other point being, he hasn't got any boots to put on the ground. Apparently, if we were to place a peacekeeping force after some kind of settlement in Ukraine that would be able to have any effect at all, we'd need about 100,000 British soldiers to go. At a stretch, we might just be able to manage 5,000. So he's talking in fantasy land for a start. I mean, he's playing politics, I assume. He's trying to act like he's at the centre of things. But while America and Russia, and by the way, tomorrow Zelensky arrives in Saudi Arabia as well. So I don't... I'm just hearing... Is he not coming now? I'm just hearing... Oh, Zelensky's now saying he's not going to Saudi Arabia. But either way, Starmer's trying to place himself centre stage. And yet he's not centre stage. He's gone to this sulky emergency summit, Macron's emergency summit in Paris, where all these EU loser leaders are all going, I can't believe they didn't want us at the talks. And as if to prove what a dysfunctional mob they are, the fact they couldn't agree what day of the week it is if you sat them down for a year. Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, storms out because he's furious that Keir Starmer has been talking about putting boots on the ground too early, and he says he's very irritated. So what's your assessment of our Prime Minister's behaviour?
Well, look, these are early stages of negotiations. I don't like a lot of what America is saying about these early stages of negotiations, but they are very early, and I think it's very important we don't overreact. The problem with the European setup is, as you sort of hinted at, I think then, is most of the European leaders, they are either unpopular or they're about to face elections. And so anything they agree on really can't be relied upon.
Yeah, good point.
We know Keir Starmer is 20%, he's lost 20% in the opinion polls. He's third in some British opinion polls at the moment, behind Reform, sometimes even behind the Conservatives. It's that bad. The German government is about to be booted out. Macron, who convened this summit, he's going to be on his way out soon, and he's very unpopular anyway. He can't even form a government in France. You can go through all the various European governments, and it's very difficult for them to agree on anything. Even if they were all capable of agreeing lines, a common line, they can't because of either elections or unpopularity. And so America must look over the Atlantic and look at this squabbling pack of politicians, and somehow Keir Starmer is going to say, I'm going to be the bridge between this group of politicians and you. It's just laughable. It is laughable. And this is why, ultimately, there's all sorts of reasons why Brexit hasn't lived up to expectations. But, Kev, and I think we probably agree on that. But Europe is fundamentally incapable, when it really matters, of coming to a big decision on things that really matter. And it is ridiculous that for 40, 50 years, we've had to rely on America to defend our continent. But I'm not optimistic that the European countries will do what they most need to. Forget about Ukraine. Forget about anything to do with Ukraine at the moment. At the moment, the transatlantic guarantee is in danger. Europe clearly needs to spend more on its defence. But do you have any confidence that these squabbling politicians will agree on a plan?
No, and I think that I believe that America and Russia, if they continue to exclude the EU leaders, which I think they will, they won't be stupid enough to exclude Zelensky. They will want Ukraine to agree whatever deal they come to. So if you have a trilateral agreement between America, Russia and, the guy in the frame, Zelensky, Ukraine, then you've got a good deal. And their instincts to say, let's not invite those squabbling losers here to Saudi Arabia because they'll just make any kind of agreement completely impossible, is correct. Is correct. Those people, they're dysfunctional. They're dysfunctional. And here's the thing about Starmer. I understand he's playing politics. He's trying to sort of say, look at me, I'm the big I am. I'm right at the centre of all this, even though he isn't. That speech, I was just talking to Rod Little about that speech, that brilliant, mesmerising speech that J.D. Vance made in Munich last Friday, where he roasted these cowering EU leaders and essentially said, you want us to be your friend. you want America to be your allies, you better start encouraging freedom of speech and not killing it stone dead. Freedom, he said. You have to believe in freedom, and you people don't. Now, Keir Starmer seems to believe that when J.D. Vance made that speech, he wasn't pointing the finger at him. Well, he's forgotten, just said this to Rod, that actually, for something like a full 4 minutes in the middle of a 20-minute speech, he said, even our dear friends in the United Kingdom, and then off he went. That speech was pretty much directed directly at Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer doesn't think it is him. He thinks he's the bridge between America and Europe. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance think that he is exactly the same as the rest of them, a kind of a woke idiot who can't get things done.
Yeah, and this is the difficult sort of position Britain's in, because it's very clear that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance don't really much admire Europe or the European nature of governance. They certainly don't like the European Union. So Britain should be in a good place, really, because we left the European Union and we finally have a president, unlike Joe Biden, who appreciates the decision we've taken. But of course they also know that Keir Starmer never supported Brexit. That he campaigned actually for a second referendum that would have taken us back into the European Union. So they kind of, I think they probably, the reality is, Kevin, just between ourselves, I whisper this, but...
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, it's possible that Trump and Vance haven't spent an awful lot of time thinking about Keir Starmer. He's perhaps not at the centre of their attention, and they probably haven't quite yet decided what they think of him. When Donald Trump...
I think they'll regard him as a useful idiot that they can play
the word that Trump's been using recently is nice. He was nice. Now, I don't know what nice means.
Nice guy.
Nice means in the sort of real world, real estate trade of New York, which of course Trump is familiar with. But I think the jury's still out on what they think of him, and that may change very soon if Keir Starmer goes over there with the ridiculous demands.
Well, here's a big particular problem that Starmer has if he is to genuinely endear himself to the president and indeed the vice president, who I think last Friday emerged as almost certainly the next president of the United States of America.
Well, if the Republicans can win, certainly the Republican nominee.
As long as Trump carries on like he is, I think they will win the next election, and it will be JD. And I think the world will be in pretty good hands. He's a bright guy. But here's the problem for Starmer right now. Trump, rather, exaggeratedly, is demanding that every EU nation, all the NATO nations, start spending 5% of their GDP on defence, which would involve him, because they only spend 3.38% in America. So, take the plank out of your own eye first, Donald. But he's saying, you've got, and I'm sure you agree with me, he's got a point there. The NATO nations have got to step up to the plate. They've got to start spending more on defence. Now, the UK currently spends 2.3%. Not that great. Slightly better than France and Germany, some of the other nations, but, we're not a massive investor in defence. So Donald says, you've got to start paying 5%. Keir Starmer says, well, what I can do, we're currently spending...
It sounds more like John Major than Keir Starmer.
It's also Rachel Reeves. It's my kind of generic impersonation. No, what he says is, what I could do for you, Donald, is, you say 5% GDP. Well, we currently spend 2.3%, but I'm going to put in place a roadmap via which we might be able to approach 2.5%.
Oh, wow.
And he seems to think that will be a deal. It won't be. No. This will be a major sticking point between America and Britain if Starmer sticks to we're not going to spend more than 2.5.
Yeah, and I think what we're saying, look, who knows exactly what's going on Donald Trump's mind at the moment? I certainly wouldn't.
At any point.
At any point. But I think he clearly does want to make some kind of peace with Russia. Partly because I think in America's big calculation, China is the real foe. No, Russia's not a big economy. Russia is not a big economy.
Smaller
at
than
all.
Italy's.
Yeah, and so really, America knows they can ultimately deal with Russia. What they don't want to be is fighting on two fronts, if you like.
Yeah.
They want to concentrate on China.
Yep.
But what they do want is Europe to start looking after its own backyard. And I think part of this negotiation that's taking place at the moment is just to frighten Europe into finally spending money on defence appropriate to the challenge that they face. And so if, as you say, after all of this pressure, Keir Starmer comes up with a measly offer of the kind that you've described, the White House are not going to take that well.
No, they're not. They're not.
Why I actually have some sympathy with actually America saying you've got to spend 5%, even though America's only spending 3.4%. You can't actually create a defence industry overnight. You know, we don't even have the companies, the infrastructure, the ability to produce artillery at the moment, which is quite a fine technical art now.
Yeah.
And so actually we probably would need to spend more for an interim period just to get the sort of defence industry up and running.
I think we'll just take it as sheer political posturing when Keir Starmer says, "Boots on the ground, I'm going to put British troops as a peacekeeping force." By the way, Russia say, no, you're not. And the other big point is, what boots? You haven't got enough soldiers. So we'll leave that one hanging in the air. And when we come back, we'll talk more about these ludicrous tribunal judges that are turning our migrant system into a madhouse. So that next. Stick around.
Well, Keir Starmer is a desperate Prime Minister in search of a good war, knowing entirely well that it is a completely fake proposal. Keir Starmer knows completely well that you can't send some kind of raggle-taggle gypsy crew of willing volunteers from around Europe to go to Ukraine to, as he puts it, be peacekeepers, because there's no structure within which to do that. Right. Who would command them?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Tim Montgomery, Reform UK member, political commentator. Now, let's talk about the migrant crisis. I noticed today that Labour's big plan is essentially not to solve the migrant crisis. This is harking back to Rishi Sunak's day, but to use fewer hotels to house asylum seekers, and this will make the bill for the nation much cheaper. But it turns out now, we learn quietly, that hotels will continue to accommodate illegal migrants for the next 4 years. I would add at least to that.
They were supposed to be originally, they had a promise to get rid of them after 12 months, didn't they?
Yeah, well, actually, the last few months they've been commandeering more and more hotels. That's because more and more migrants are coming. So make no mistake, folks, you know, the Labour have got no plans to solve this crisis. They're doing their best to try to sort of maintain it, but not doing very well. But I think what is emerging last couple of weeks, Tim, we have a serious problem with these tribunal judges. The latest horror, you know, that letting out paedophiles who come out of jail after doing 5 years being allowed to stay because of their right to a family life. That guy last week allowed to stay because his kid didn't like the taste of Albanian chicken.
That was extraordinary.
Nuggets, you know, and a Caribbean woman saying, I can't take my Latvian husband back to Grenada. He doesn't like Caribbean food and he can't stand those hot temperatures. Judge goes, fair point. Why didn't you say that before? You can stay. I mean, it's crazy. The latest horror is a 22-year-old Slovakian who smashed a woman to the ground with a shovel and served a 15-month stretch in jail for that, has been allowed to stay because a judge called Christopher John Hansen, they've always got 3 names, haven't they? Always double-barreled. Because he's apparently been very successfully rehabilitated. The Home Office tried to deport this guy. He's got 3 previous convictions for threats, abuse, domestic abuse, especially in driving while disqualified. They tried to get rid of him because they believed, and I quote, he was a serious threat to the public. The judge, Christopher John Hansen, said, no, his rehabilitation appears to have been very successful. He can stay. We have got a serious problem with these tribunal judges, haven't we?
Massive problem. And one thing that's working in Trump land, the reason why they're able to extradite is because they got the court system sorted out in the first term of the Trump presidency. So the Supreme Court, the ultimate court in the US, is controlled by conservatives, in inverted commas. Yeah. You imagine if a reformed government or a reformed conservative government comes in next time, I think we can write off this Labour government. They're not going to get serious about this issue. But if you had a government that actually seriously wanted to extradite these people who should be extradited, there's so many in the court system that would just frustrate this. And I don't know what the solution is to this, Kev, but unless we have a major change in how this country is governed, not by the politicians who we elect, but by all these bureaucrats and judges and planners and administrators and civil servants that make up the British state, we won't ever get what we want at general elections. Because I don't know what it's like to be an administrator in the Home Office or someone who's trying to get these people extradited, but to come up against those judges must be so soul-destroying for them. You know, you've clearly got someone who is a threat to public life, and I bet both of us would agree to this bet. I bet you that person that the judge says is reformed, I bet he'll be causing trouble within the next 5 years in some way, perhaps much sooner than that.
Much sooner than that. Yeah, that would be my bet.
Yeah, and so why are these judges? Will there ever be any accountability for these judges? Will they be held accountability for their judgment now that he's a reformed character? Will they be struck off if there's a pattern of them giving licence to these people, which proves to be unfounded? I expect they'll carry on getting their pay, carry on getting on their pension, and meanwhile the British taxpayer is having to fork out more and more money, the accommodation and the benefits for these people.
And they always say, these judges, well, you know, I had to let him say, my hands were tied by the European Convention on Human Rights.
Well, let's leave it then.
I think it's Article 8 is your right to a family life. There's another, Article 3, I think, is you mustn't send anyone back to anywhere where they will receive unusual punishment and harsh treatment, that kind of thing. So they always say, my hands are tied because of the ECHR. The thing is, and of course the obvious thing, which for some reason Kemi Badenoch doesn't want to do, is we should leave the ECHR and make our own decisions. But trust me, we would bring in, obviously, we would bring in our own human rights legislation. And trust me, these judges, the ECHR, in the end, is not the problem. It is the way these judges interpret the ECHR. And if we get rid of the ECHR, if we leave, they'll come up with something else to interpret in the favour of the migrants against this country, because I think they basically see themselves as judges fighting against a racist, repressive British regime.
I don't think they even necessarily would say they even need to come up with something new. I think some of them would argue that the ECHR is already so embedded into British law, we can't remove it.
It's in the 1998 Equalities Act, isn't it? We'd have to redraft that law, so there is a problem there. But I mean, where there's a will, but you know, in the end, I do think the ECHR is something we shouldn't be in. It would be a good idea to get out, but it will not be the cure-all that most people think it is if we leave, because you'll still have these judges who, frankly, you know, they only know of one newspaper, it's called The Guardian, and they'll always make these decisions that are in favour of paedophiles, rapists, criminals that we want to deport. They'll always say, no, you can stay.
What absolutely we do need at the next election is absolute intent from whichever party becomes a majority party that wants to do this, that they are determined that people do not have the right to redress to this European court or its embedded shadows in British law, that actually the British people have decided they want action on this. And then you have this almighty battle, probably involving the House of Lords as well, between the elected representatives of the British people and these judges, which ultimately we have to win, because if we don't win that battle, this situation will go on and on and on.
Well, let's get sort of lyrical. We've got a couple of minutes left. I do think that this country is careering headlong into a world ruled by law. That's the pleasant interpretation. People like Keir Starmer said, the rule of law, the rule of law. Well, we are not enduring the rule of law. What we're enduring is the rule of lawyers. And politicians. We elect politicians to be our government. We don't elect lawyers, and yet politicians don't make the final decisions now. The courts do. And somehow or other, if we want this country to be better, we need to recalibrate that. That's what Donald Trump has done, basically, with a sort of freight train. He's driven it straight through their system. We need to try to do something about this increasing, not rule of law, rule of lawyers.
Completely agree. And it's not just lawyer, I would say, Kev. The Bank of England's power as well. Do you remember when Liz Truss had her tussle with the Bank of England? She made mistakes, but the Bank of England was never held accountable for the chaos that they caused in the markets, that compounded the mistakes that she made. We have a whole series of planning regimes in this country, administrators and lawyers, who mean that even if when we vote for stuff, things don't happen, and that has to change.
Exactly right. I mean, they come up with a law and then it is tested in the courts. Well, we voted for the politicians to come up with these laws. We didn't vote for some judge to say that is unlawful. And that's what's going on more and more and more. And also, I do think we have a seriously unhealthy number of lawyers or ex-lawyers who are MPs, who are politicians. So that only goes to enshrine this belief in the rule of law. I mean, Keir Starmer's entire outlook is the rule of law, be it domestic or international. They're calling Donald Trump the least lawful president in American history, and that's a great day for America, frankly. It really is.
I wonder, though, whether we've always been a country where we've sort of had an unwritten constitution, and I wonder whether lawyers are now hiding behind that, and actually whether a written constitution of some kind, where things are really clarified, is the only way of getting around this.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. O'Sullivan and Montgomery put the world to rights. The country is okay now. But actually, if they did act on some of our great ideas, it would be a better country, trust me. Tim Montgomery, what a pleasure to have you on board, as always. Tim will be back next Tuesday. Meanwhile, after the break, I'm going to be talking to Mike Neville, former copper, about the wokery that is destroying our police today. It is really crazy. That next. Stay tuned.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the second hour of the Political Asylum. I didn't really plan this, but I think the theme of the show is emerging as the scourge of the woke mind virus, wokery, infesting every element of our lives these days. You know, the police, the justice system, politics, everything, international politics. It's all wokery. That is the problem. That's what J.D. Vance was talking about when he roasted those EU leaders last Friday in Munich. You can call it, you know, an assault on freedom of speech. Why do they have these assaults on freedom of speech? Because they're woke. You know, because they think it's the nice thing to do to stop people saying nasty things about Muslims or gays or whatever. You know, nobody encourages that. That's not a nice thing to do. But this over-the-top approach to making sure everyone is nice to everyone is what produces wokery, and we end up with the madhouse we're all living in now. So for the next half an hour or so, we're going to talk about how the woke mind virus has turned our police, the British police, I think, into a laughingstock. It's sort of gormless, Guardian-reading wannabes. You know, you can always trust, you can always rely on the police to be the most woke people in town. I think because they're just terrified of anybody criticising them or something. Anyway, to discuss this downhill slide, ex-Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville's in the studio. Welcome, Mike.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, we've got two examples that I think are going to make it very clear to you what we're talking about. And I do think this is not, I mean, part of this is funny, but only funny in the sense that if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. This is serious stuff. So, first of all, Mike, let's talk about a, I'm going to use the technical term, transgender woman. That's a bloke, you know, a man in a skirt. It appears in court accused of raping an underage girl and sexually assaulting an underage boy. Now, this transgender woman, as I say, a transgender woman is a male, is a bloke. It's called Madison Wilson, 37, only accused, has not put in a plea yet, so no one is saying he is guilty of these offences yet because the court case hasn't happened. Anyway, at Southampton Magistrates Court 4 weeks out. So, first of all, Madison Wilson. That's not his name, is it? I don't suppose for a second that this bloke from Portsmouth, which is where he's from, was born Madison. So is that what? So we're calling him his chosen female name, as opposed to his actual name. Then the barristers, the learned judge and the learned barristers and all the people in the court, including the police, have to wade through all this claptrap about, you know, her and she and they, you know, addressing Madison as they, he, or a she or her. No, it's a he. It's a he. And all this nonsense about, you know, she attacked her victim with her penis. Now, this last week we did a story saying that the Judiciary Council was drawing up instructions for all this to stop. Because apart from anything else, it makes the proceedings very hard to follow. You're not quite sure who's talking about which. Hang on, when you say she, her, do you mean that bloke in the dock? Yes, we do. It's crazy. So Wilson arrived at Southampton Magistrates Court wearing a pink headband, all black tracksuit and white sports trainers, didn't enter any pleas, but faces court alleged sex offences against children under the age of 13 dating back 14 years. Now, my question to you, Mike, is how did we get to this point where in court, you've heard it, I've heard it in court, you've seen it, where we have lawyers saying things, and at this point, Your Honour, She attacked her victim with her penis. This is just insanity, isn't it?
Well, it's not only just insanity, it's almost contrary to the law. It is contrary to the law. So the Sexual Offences Act 2003, that covers rape. And what the law says is that he intentionally entered a part of a woman's body and with his penis. So the actual law is quite specific. You know, it's absolutely laid down that only a man can commit these crimes. So how the court is going along with that is very worrying. But the other thing as well, the most important part for me is the victims, because it almost like waters down what's happened to the victims.
We should say in this case with Madison Wilson, alleged victims, he's the alleged perpetrator of these awful crimes because he hasn't put in a plea yet, but generically...
the victims involved in this. And also it causes all sorts of confusion, this non-gender specific language. So I was speaking to a colleague, a retired colleague, and he dealt with the police, and throughout the paperwork, they did this, they did that. And he said, well, there's only one person involved in this, so why is it they? But the officer didn't want to put he or she. So the story reads as though two people did the crime, because it's they, and then there's really only one person. So all this ridiculous nonsense just confuses people. It doesn't make justice easy. And what it does, it makes the justice system look stupid. It's got a bad enough reputation as it is. People know that people get two-tier justice, they get lower sentences than people would imagine, and it just absolutely, it looks ridiculous. How does a woman rape a woman? And a pink headband does not make a woman.
Yeah, and if nothing else, this is the crux of it. This is the epicentre of this deranged insanity. I think from courts, this should be coppers as well, we must ban in our British justice system the term her penis.
Yes, it's absolutely...
A female, cannot have a penis. Why are the courts doing this? And the cops as well?
It comes from the top, though, doesn't it? Because according to our great leader, Keir Starmer, at least 1 in 1,000 women have a penis, because according to him, 99.9% of women don't have one. So that means that 0.01% do have them. So when this sort of nonsense comes from the very, very top, that people, and some of these people in the police and judiciary, they're all part of the same left liberal leaning, so they go along with this. And the second thing is, a lot of these people are ambitious. So they'll do, if the Prime Minister says that, you know, black is white, white is black, war is peace, whatever it is, they will go along with it. And the trouble is, it's ordinary people who are victims of crime see this, and it just waters down what they
and I'd say that 99% of the people in this country will look at this gobbledygook, this sort of trans gobbledygook, and just go, what is this? What's happened to my country? And the fact that the justice system has embraced this nonsense, I think, is extremely worrying. I mean, there is a bit of a backlash now. As I say, the Judiciary Council is now instructing courts to stop this. But historically, it's like coppers being told to stop this. They don't tend to do it. They just carry on. The culture is being created. And it's wrapped up, I think, particularly with the coppers, in a kind of be kind attitude. Be kind to this person. Well, we don't know what Madison Wilson is guilty or not guilty of, because he has yet to put a plea in. But, you know, the charges against Madison Wilson are such that, you know, I wouldn't fall over myself to be kind to him. Why are we bothering?
Well, what the court should be concerned with is facts, not feelings. So he may feel that he's a woman. It is a fact that he is a man. And this is what's happened throughout society, is that we're judging feelings, not facts. And if you want an example of how this goes through the whole of Western society, you only had to see the reaction to J.D. Vance's speech. You know, that German politician crying about his values and all this. But it's not our values. It's their values. And it's everywhere in Western Europe. Yeah. And it's somehow we've got to have a change, because the current government and the Tories, they've allowed this carry-on to go on, and it can't keep on, because, as you say, how is it that 1% of the population dictates what the other 99% of us
Yeah, and when that sobbing German started crying because of his shared values, you're right. I actually literally said this earlier in the show. It's not his shared values with a few of those other EU leaders. He's from Germany. 99% of the people of Germany do not share his values. I don't share his values. I don't share these woke idiots in the Labour cabinet's values. They just go on about our shared values. They're referring to themselves, not the people. Not the people.
But what they do, though, they've used control. They've used law to control us and all this. So all these people, they use law to say, if you say you're a transphobe, they've introduced Islamophobe, they've introduced all these things to control the population. So people feel afraid and they go along with this nonsense because most people, we're lucky we have an opportunity to speak out. Most people don't, and they're afraid of being given one of these labels and what impact, if they work in the public sector or something like that, they can just be thrown out. It's
Orwellian language control. Be afraid of what you might say, be very afraid, because if you say the wrong things, we're going to cancel you, we're going to ruin your life, we're going to make sure you don't have any income, we'll make your family starve because you said the wrong thing, you misgendered a trans woman. That is the kind of nonsense. Now, that culture is in some retreat, but not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. And I would suggest, let me know what you all think, please, give me a call. Isn't it time that courtrooms, that judges, coppers, barristers, defendants for that matter, were all banned from using one particular phrase, but you know what that expands out to, everything else along these lines. No more should we hear in a British court the term she attacked her victim with her penis. Don't you think? Don't you think that would be a good start? No more of this. And we replace that with the truth. He attacked his victim with his penis. Because that's what actually happened, as opposed to the fantasy version of this strange woman with a male appendage that doesn't actually exist. What do you reckon? Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. And I'm seriously pointing the finger at the police here. The police, they start this woke ball rolling with every single case. First up, describing anyone who comes in to report a crime, I've had this stolen, I've been raped or whatever, as the victim. No, they're the alleged victim until the case is proven. But that's just the least heinous of the police's crimes in that area. And when we come back, I'm going to give you a case of police wokery that you just won't believe. It beggars belief. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back in just a little while.
Well, Keir Starmer is a desperate Prime Minister in search of a good war, knowing entirely well that it is a completely fake proposal. Keir Starmer knows completely well that you can't send some kind of raggle-taggle gypsy crew of willing volunteers from around Europe to go to Ukraine to, as he puts it, be peacekeepers, because there's no structure within which to do that. Right. Who would command them?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with ex-Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville, who dates back to the days when the police force was something we could respect. Was full of sensible men like him, solving, doing that thing. Do you remember those days? Remember when the police used to solve crimes? Those were the days, eh? This case will knock your socks off. It's just unbelievable. So, this concerns a woman called Farishta Jami. She's 36 years old. She was a dinner lady. Nothing wrong with being a dinner lady, but when you hear the rest of her story, it's quite funny. She was preparing to travel to Afghanistan with her kids, wanted them to become martyrs for Islamic State. She was a big fan of ISIS. She had in her home massive stores of extremist, terrorist, Islamic State propaganda. Anyway, she's just been done 2 charges of terrorism. And this was at Leicester Crown Court. In fact, 2 counts of preparing acts of terrorism. Now, at the point, she's 36 years old, Leicester Crown Court, as I say, dinner lady. At the point of her conviction, and she's waiting to find out what her sentence will be, her defence barrister turned to the judge and complained that images, photographic images, the mugshot of his client, had shown her face. Mugshots, faces, sort of part and parcel of a mugshot, really. And as a Muslim, because she's a woman, she was extremely distressed by this. And the barrister, the lawyer, said, could you rectify this, please? And could you get the press to not use the picture of my client and to use the one with a niqab on, a face covering, which is a bit like a mugshot. It's Kevin O'Sullivan mugshot. He's got a sack over his head. Yeah, well, that's the mugshot. I mean, it doesn't work, does it? Anyway, this is what we think about the barrister's request not to show her face. There she is, if you're watching on the telly. And so all the newspapers, to their credit, dismissed this request with the contempt it deserved. Now, that request was also passed on to West Midlands Police, the police force in question. And they withdrew the picture of Farishta Jami in all her facial glory, and put out that picture you just of a niqab. It could have been anyone. That's what they did. And my question, Mike, is what the hell do the police think they're playing out there?
Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? If you look into this, the judge lady, Chima Grubb, she's of Asian origin. She dismissed this and said there's nothing. And we often look to black and Asian judges and politicians. They often come up with the most sensible things when they're asked about this sort of stuff. But the police as well have gone the extra mile of wokery here, because if we look at the actual request, what the barrister said is he just wanted her head covered. But no, and then the West Midlands have taken this away and then released this full niqab picture, it just invites ridicule. Yeah. And what it says to the public is that, look, we're more concerned with this criminal's feelings, this terrorist feelings, rather than what you need to know. And also those images will be used on the facial recognition system to see if she appears in any other crimes. But it just makes the police look ridiculous. And this follows on from the Southport murders, where we had another issue with them not releasing mugshots, releasing Welsh choir boy images rather than the proper mugshot.
What was that about?
Well, I'm trying to find. I'm literally trying to find that out as we speak. But it just shows that the police are pandering to people who commit the most wicked crimes, rather than saying, look, this is a terrorist, this is a murderer, look at the images. And we all know that mugshots, they do people down, don't they? They release them. People got blue fluff in their hair because they've been sleeping on a scabby police blanket or whatever. People never look the best. But they have no problem with releasing mugshots of those who they deem, in the two-tier society.
Millwall fans
or whatever else. They're always out there, far-right rioters or whatever they are, and rightly so to release them. But then we get this nonsense, and it tells the public that the police are not on their side. And at the moment, trust and confidence in the police is the lowest ever, and it's really sad to see, because there's a lot of hard-working, brave officers out there, and this does the frontline officers no favours at all.
Yeah, so this Forrester Jamie, what she wanted to do, she believed very strongly in the use of children in warfare, wanted to take her own little kids out to the Middle East, where she was prepared to sacrifice them, their lives, for the Islamic State cause, has, as I say, been found guilty of 2 counts of preparing acts of terrorism. And her defence barrister talked about how the release of the picture of her face had caused her some considerable distress, and that the police had agreed to release a different image. Now, here's the point. This woman who was prepared to sacrifice her poor little kids for Islamic State, to go out to the Middle East and let her kids die. You know, in other words, you know, scumbag. I don't give a rat's backside about her distress. You know, why do the police care?
We're back to feelings rather than fact. And why are we bothered about the feelings of somebody, like say, who's prepared what it looks like to put their children as suicide bombers? Why are we bothered about, you know, oh, I don't want my face, or I don't want my head, my hair, my face, or whatever it is shown? We don't care. We've released the picture, and as I said, all credit to the judge for saying I can't make an order this way, and all credit as well to the media for not playing the stupid games. But it just sends a very poor message out about West Midlands police. They should be doing better than this. Time spent releasing that other photograph would have been better doing some investigation work and solving a few burglaries.
When did this all start, Mike? Because what it plays into, isn't it, is the, you know, coppers being more interested in dancing the Macarena than solving crimes. Chief constables whose big obsession seems to be community relations. As I always say, you know, I don't give a damn about community relations. I'll tell you what would promote good community relations between police forces and the communities they serve. That would be if the police forces bothered to solve a few crimes. How about that?
Well, it started with the Blair, and I remember the moment the Blair government came in. I was the detective sergeant in charge of the intelligence unit. We'd been told before the targets were arrest robbers, arrest burglars, this sort of thing, and a target came in, you must target racist crime. And I was the DS at Brixton, and we tried our hardest, because what they wanted was a sort of bald Millwall fan who was, you know, shoving dog dirt through some poor, unfortunate woman's letterbox. All we could find was a black guy who was slightly deranged, who shouted racist things outside Stockwell Tube Station. So we didn't find the right person at all.
Oh, wrong colour, right?
It was wrong one, you see. And it just invited ridicule, really.
Well, the boss say, no, 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 I want a white racist.
Exactly, that's what it was. And also I was responsible in the police for deciding who had images of criminals committing crime on CCTV. And I used to produce the journal Caught on Camera, and I was like the editor. So you pick the best image, that photographic-wise, and the serious crime. So people, you know, then they'd look at the rest. And I got a phone call saying, you've got to put more white people on the front of the journal. So from Scotland Yard, and so we just, in the end, we just put ridiculous things on. We ridiculed it, and, you know. But it shows that fault line that they weren't concerned that my efforts were to catch murderers, rapists, robbers. I was just selecting the best image for the worst crime to encourage officers to look at the other stuff, and that wasn't the matter. The matter was, you must put more white people on the front cover.
So it reduces police work to kind of propaganda, really, doesn't it, as opposed to doing what you're supposed to do, which is catch the bad guys.
Well, all the time you've got officers worrying. You've got officers worrying. The worst thing you can be accused of in the police is racism. You can be accused of corruption and whatever else. You get accused of racism and you're facing losing your job. And so that's why, you know, stop and search goes down and people still carry knives and kill each other, and all sorts of other things happen because they're stopped. You're in a moment thinking, if I do this, what's the consequence?
Yeah, but the kind of warped thinking that went behind the release of the picture of Axel Rudikabana up in Southport, not as he is now. We've seen that picture of him. He looks like the devil. But instead to release a picture of him when he was an angelic 12-year-old choir boy. The warped thinking behind that is off the scale, isn't it?
It is off the scale, but again, it comes from the top. So you've got a situation where the Prime Minister's saying people should be arrested for putting out misinformation, yet the government, the information that was being pumped out by the authorities was that he was a Welsh Choir boy.
Yeah.
So who is guilty of misinformation there? But if that is coming from the top, you know, if you're an ambitious chief constable or whatever else, and you're being told, well, this is the way the government want to play it, this is what they get.
Yeah, of course.
And so it is a terrible business.
And, I mean, what they're trying to do up with in Southport was they're sort of trying to pretend that, you know, you've just got this rogue kid who used to be a lovely kid in Cardiff but has obviously gone wrong a bit. No suggestion of any terrorism or anything like that. He wasn't a Welsh choir boy. He was a lot more than that. And there was a connection to terrorism. So they lied through their teeth, the police, in order to project a better image. So as somehow or other, we don't think too badly of a guy who walked into a dance hall and killed 3 little girls. Well, I mean, come on.
Well, they put someone in prison for saying he was an asylum seeker, and what was inferred, he was a Muslim, he's an asylum seeker, and so people were put in prison because of that. Now, who spread the most misinformation here? Who decides what is
Keir
misinformation?
Starmer, the police and the authorities.
Because
they're the ones who spread the disinformation in Southport. And we now know they just lied to us, and that's extraordinary.
And it'd be interesting to see what comes of this, because, of course, the FBI have now accessing all his computer. So it'll be interesting what comes up there, because all that was white. But the mugshot, going back to the mugshot, it just sums up that the police don't think about the public, and this is why trust and confidence in policing is so low. And it's a sad thing, because British policing was seen as the best in the world, and it's lost that, and it's a sad thing to see.
On the altar of this crazed wokery that they're too terrified to break away from, because I think they live in a state of constant fear that people are going to criticise them in the way that they used to. I don't think people remotely think of the police as racist anymore, but I think the police mentality is still locked in the 1970s, 1980s, where they think that the public think they're racist.
They're absolutely terrified of it. And what was when I was serving, they would say, "Oh, the more diverse the police is, the more we recruit different people, the more we'll get trust. The more we do this, we'll get more trust." But the facts are that the more diverse the police has got, the more they've gone away from recruiting who's the best person for this job, whether they're black, white, gay, straight, Asian, whatever. Instead of going to who's the best person, with all these targets, trust and confidence in policing has collapsed. So, with all the wokery, it has achieved, not only has it achieved nothing, it's achieved a minus result, because it's at ground level now, the trust in policing, whereas 20 years ago it was up in the clouds.
Just to go back to your the Axel Ruder Kapana case that we were talking about, you've put in a Freedom of Information request, haven't you, requesting to know why it was that Merseyside police saw fit not to release a picture of him currently, but a picture of him when he was an angelic schoolboy. Any action on that?
Not at all, because, of course, according to the law, in 20 working days, I'm supposed to receive a reply. And I was literally, as I sat outside the studios, it's far more than 20 days. So Merseyside police should be telling me what is happening with that.
I bet you they say, oh, it was the only picture available or something like that.
Well, they had the mugshot. The mugshot existed. When you get arrested, as soon as you go into the police station, that mugshot is taken. So that was definitely available.
Yeah, well, Mike's making a fascinating point there. I mean, well, I think we know what's going on, but what are your thoughts about Merseyside police going out of their way after that horror in Southport? That grotesque occurrence in Southport. I mean, it looks to me, and it looks to Mike, as if the Merseyside police, cognizant of what this monster had done, tried to polish up his image, to try to make sure that we didn't think too badly of him. Why do you think they did that? What on earth was going on there?
And who was influencing that decision?
Yeah, exactly.
Who was influencing the decision?
You know, call me old-fashioned, but when somebody goes into a dance floor and kills, stabs to death 3 lovely little girls, there's not a lot that a nice picture can do to change my mind about what I think about that guy. But anyway, what do you make of all that? 03444991000. Big thanks to Mike Neville. Deep dive there into everything that I think is wrong with the police force. As I said earlier, the theme of tonight's show, I didn't plan this, but it seems to be wokery is turning this country mad. And wokery, I think, has turned our police force into one of the most respected on the face of the earth, to a bloody laughingstock. It really has. Your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Big thanks to Mike, as always. We'll be back in just a little while.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We might try and squeeze in a couple of calls in just a little while, but I've got a couple of videos I want to play you. Now, if you've been following the show for the last week or so, there's a guy called Mohammed Hoblos. He's what you might call an Islamic hate preacher. He has got this tour of Britain lined up. It's supposed to start tomorrow night in East London, and then he's going to go through 5 cities. So it's a 5-city tour. It's called Together as One. It's supposed to be a preparation of Ramadan, a preparation for Ramadan. And I believe there's 4 other preachers involved. But Mohammed Hoblos is the main attraction, the star of the show. Among other things, he says that if you're a paedophile rapist and you rape a baby every day, but you pray to Allah, Allah thinks you're better than someone who lives a blameless life, never touches a baby, is a decent human being, but doesn't pray. That's one of his thoughts. He also forbids his followers from in any way condemning his mates in Hamas, and so on and so forth. His rhetoric is seen to be divisive and incitement to violence, and that's why 29 countries in Europe, the Schengen states as they call them, 29 countries in Europe have banned him. As of now, we're not sure. We think he might still be coming to Britain. We've been trying to get an answer out of the Home Office for a week. I personally phoned, that doesn't happen often. I got on the phone, got my notebook out, you know, like the old days. Trilby, pressed, all that also. Seriously, I phoned the Home Office last Wednesday. That's the Wednesday afternoon. And I said, is this guy coming or is he banned like elsewhere in Europe? He's in our process system. We'll get back to you. Give me your email, which I did. And apparently I was on a list with someone from the Telegraph and the Mail. Oh, I never heard back at all. No email. When we contacted them again yesterday and today, the Home Office changed their goalposts. They said, oh, no, we never comment on individual cases. I don't know where they got that from, because they do. But apparently not in the case of Mohammed Hoblos. So we don't really know what's going on. His tour is supposed to start tomorrow, and for some reason the Home Office won't tell us whether or not he's banned. And you kind of wonder why. Is it that they want to ban him, but the Labour government's a bit worried about upsetting the Muslim community, so it wants to do it quietly? Or is it that they don't want to ban him at all? They want to, unlike 29 European countries, let him in to spread his bile and vile hatred. We can't quite get an answer. Anyway, the person who brought this story to me was the brilliant Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. She's still on the case and, like me, remains somewhat confused. Here we are. This time tomorrow night, Mohammed Hoblos is supposed to be on stage in London. And we can't get a straight answer from the Home Office as to whether or not he's going to be here. As things stand, as far as we understand it, there's nothing stopping him, unless the Home Office has decided something they're not telling us. Transparent, eh? Yeah, this is the transparency of a socialist government, folks, trust me. Anyway, Isabel has made a little video to kind of sum up the situation until now. We've still got a lot of road to travel before tomorrow night. I mean, God knows what might happen, but this is Isabel's thoughts so far.
I want to talk about the curious case of Mohammed Hoblos, a radical Islamic preacher who is banned from the whole of Europe, the whole of the Schengen area. They don't want him in, but guess what, folks? Looks like he's coming to the UK on a speaking tour. Properly nasty piece of work, this guy. He seems to think, this is what he said, by the way, that it is better to be a rapist, a murderer, or even a paedophile, and to commit those crimes on a daily basis than it is not to pray to Allah. He's also got some pretty weird views about what he calls foreign women. Presumably that includes British women. He says that it's better for you to have an iron nail driven in the back of your skull and through your brain than to touch a foreign woman. No one else seems to want this guy anywhere near their country, but the Home Office, as of today, refuses to confirm or deny whether he's going to be allowed in to Britain to take part in a speaking tour to mark the beginning of Ramadan. He's slated to appear at venues in Birmingham, Manchester, London, Middlesbrough. These are ticketed events. Quite a lot of tickets have been sold, which is pretty worrying in itself. And the Home Office claims that they don't comment on individual cases. For that reason, they won't tell me if they're banning him or not. Do we want this guy in Britain or not? But they continue to rattle off this line about not commenting on individual cases, which does make me wonder, what exactly is it they're afraid of? Why are they speaking in these silly riddles? Could it be that they're afraid of being accused of Islamophobia?
She's making a very good point. She'll be on the show tomorrow, of course, where we will thrash this out, and perhaps the picture might be a little clearer tomorrow night. Right now it is shrouded in mystery, thanks to this weird behaviour by the Home Office. I mean, here we are, 24 hours from where this guy's supposed to be live on stage, preaching his hatred, and we don't know whether he's coming or not. As of now, as far as we know, he is coming. We've phoned venues, and it's a little bit. It's a bit sort of it's mixed messages, but it does seem like he still is on for this tour, 5-city tour, starting in London tomorrow night. So is he coming? Is he not coming? And as Isabel says, you know, you could speculate. I am speculating here that in his heart, Keir Starmer wants to ban this guy, doesn't want him in the country, spreading his hatred, but he doesn't want to make a song and dance about it. He wants to do it quietly, just in case elements of the Muslim community might be alienated by this ban. So he wants to try to do it quietly. Well, Keir, no chance of that. No chance of that. So let me know what you feel about this guy. Should he be coming to Britain? You know, a guy who says that if you're a guy and you have a relationship with a foreign woman, you should have a nail driven in the back of your head. That Allah, God, if you like, thinks that rapists, child rapists who pray are better than decent people who don't pray. And that, of course, Hamas are wonderful, do not condemn Hamas, and so on and so forth. You know the drill, you know the kind of guy. What do you think? Should he be allowed in this country? And what do you think about the fact that the Home Office just are being weird about it? Why won't they tell us? Why won't they tell us? I mean, we're going to find out tomorrow anyway, and here we are, less than 24 hours from when he's supposed to be on stage, and they won't tell us. We don't comment on individual cases. That's not what you said last week. Last week you said you'd send me an email, and the guy from the Telegraph, and someone from the Mail. Emails. We'll let you know what our decision is. Oh, we don't comment. Something's going on here, folks. 03444991000. And I think we'll call from one video to another. This is Video Corner, folks. I just thought I'd show you this if you haven't seen it already. I'll discuss this tomorrow night with Kinsey Schofield. But this is quite a remarkable moment in the life and times of Meghan Markle. Now, ever since last March... Oh, by the way, she's that woman who's married to, what's his name, that ginger guy? Prince Harry, that's the one. Anyway, last March she launched her lifestyle site, her website, online store called American Riviera Orchard. It's never sold anything, it's never been in business, it's never open for business, and here we are almost a month on, and guess what? She suddenly changed the name. And here is what she had to say.
It's recording.
Okay. Cat's out of the bag. I'm shocked we've kept this a secret for so long. In 2 weeks, my show's coming out, which I'm so excited for, and also my business, which I think there's been a lot of curiosity about. Last year, I had thought, you know what, American Riviera, that sounds like such a great name. It's my neighborhood, it's a nickname for Santa Barbara, but it limited me to things that were just manufactured and grown in this area. Then Netflix came on, not just as my partner in the show, but as my partner in my business, which was huge. So I thought about it, and I've been waiting for a moment to share a name that I had secured in 2022, and this is the moment. And it's called As Ever. As Ever essentially means as it's always been. And if you followed me since 2014 with the TIG, you know I've always loved cooking and crafting and gardening. This is what I do, and I haven't been able to share it with you in the same way for the past few years, but now I can. So as things are starting to trickle out there, I wanted you to hear it from me first. Of course, there will be fruit preserves. I think we're all clear at this point that jam is my jam. But there's so many more products that I just love that I use in my home, and now it's time to share it with you. So I can't wait for you to see it. Thanks, guys.
Oh. So she registered this name. It's not called American Riviera Orchard anymore. It's called As Ever. It's a terrible name, isn't it? I mean, how do you say it? You go, As Ever, As Ever, As Ever. So it's not really an upbeat name, is it? But she now tells us she's had that registered since 2022. Well, if so, why did you call your website American Riviera Orchard? Why didn't you call it As Ever if you registered it in 2022? And now she, my business partners and Netflix, they're not her partners, they're her boss. They got the money. They're the ones pulling the strings. So her show, With Love, Meghan, comes out on March the 4th on Netflix. Netflix are trying to coordinate it with selling some of her jam, her honey, her towels, her wallpaper, her pet shampoo, all of that. If you are lucky enough to be in the Galleria shopping mall in Dallas or the King of Prussia shopping mall in Philadelphia, you can go to the Netflix shops and you can buy that stuff in person. So they're going to coordinate that with the release of her show, in which, by the way, when you do watch it on March the 4th, have a notebook handy, because if you don't, when the show's over, you might forget what she told you how to freeze edible flower petals into ice cubes. That's the kind of useful information that you'll get from With Love, Meghan. So that happens on March the 4th. Netflix trying to coordinate a few sales of jam and honey and God knows what at these shops. They're physical shops in these massive shopping malls in America. And a change of name, and the Daily Mail today, their headline on it was, and I'm not making any comment, folks, but the Daily Mail's headline on their online edition was, is this Meghan's latest disaster? She does seem to lurch from one disaster to the next, doesn't she? So don't forget. Recently, we've had her antics at the LA fires, where she was labelled a grief grifter, tragedy vulture, disaster tourist for going to pick her way through the ashes of smouldering Los Angeles after that terrible inferno with Harry. And then that Billie Eilish video that she made on Instagram that was excruciating, embarrassing and tone deaf. And then goes up to the Invictus Games in Whistler in Canada and spends the entire time kissing Harry so she can be in the papers. pictures. Good publicity, as opposed to the 8,000-word demolition job in Vanity Fair in January, which labelled her a dreadful bully of a boss, as did the Hollywood Reporter back in September, as did Palace employees back in Britain when she was a frontline royal. So there's this picture of a bullying boss emerging. There's also this picture of a woman desperately trying to create a blizzard of good publicity in which to launch her show and her new website. Well, it's not a new website, it's her old website, never opened for business after a year. It's now called, no longer American Riviera Orchard, it's called As Ever. There you go. So that is my royal bulletin. We will go to break now, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about... what are we going to be talking about? It's Ali Ross is John. What am I talking about? It's Ali Ross. Ali Ross is joining me. We're going to talk about Doctor Who. Can't wait.
Well, Keir Starmer is a desperate Prime Minister in search of a good war, knowing entirely well that it is a completely fake proposal. Keir Starmer knows completely well that you can't send some kind of raggle-taggle gypsy crew of willing volunteers from around Europe to go to Ukraine to, as he puts it, be peacekeepers, because there's no structure within which to do that. Right. Who would command them?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. As I said, I didn't plan this, but the theme of tonight's show seems to be wokery and all its ills. This is the scourge of modern life, isn't it? Well, one of its victims, I would suggest, looks set to be Doctor Who. 60 years old, that children's sci-fi series on the BBC, it is. And basically it's getting lost in a load of woke storylines. For example, you know, the Doctor Who, after, 900 years or something, suddenly realising he might be gay because he fancies Sir Isaac Newton. How about that? And so on and so forth. Also, a guy who's able to save London, and indeed, by extension, the world, for some reason, because he's trans. Of course, it says in the BBC bump in their literature, because they're trans. It's a bloke. Anyway, he's trans, he can save the world, and so on and so forth. Now, there's a new doctor. He's done one series named Nakuti Gatwa, and he's said to be on the brink of quitting after his first series scored dismal ratings of as low as 2.25 million. Now, there was a time not so long ago where Doctor Who could be relied on to get 15, 16, 17 million. 2.25 million. The best rated episode of this dismal woke series was 3.18 million. It was full of stud plot lines about attacking capitalism and Christianity. And there's a new bad guy played by, well, who'd have thought it, on the BBC, a drag queen. So the state broadcaster's obsession with drag queens continues apace. So what's going wrong with this series? Let's talk to the brilliant TV critic at The Sun, Ali Ross. Hi, Ali.
Evening, Kevin. How are you?
I'm all right. So the doc realises after all these centuries that he could be gay because he fancies Sir Isaac Newton. It's a great plot line. Great plot. I can't imagine what's going wrong with this series.
And Sir Isaac Newton turned out to be Asian after all these years as well.
Did he?
It's just one of these things that arrived with Russell T Davies, who took over from Chris Chibnall, who was thought to be too woke when he was the showrunner, believe it or not. But he's actually ramped it up a level. The first thing he did was take Davros out of his chair because it was insulting to disabled people.
I mean, Davros has been in a bloody wheelchair, an electric wheelchair, since I was a kid, you know, and that's a long time.
And he was terrifying. And now he looks more like Charles Hawtrey in Carry On Screaming. It's just this sort of camp, mincing old guy dressed in black who would frighten absolutely no one. And from there it went to the series where Tennant came back and was suddenly gay. Hadn't realised it for, as you say, the best part of a millennia. And then it went into this series which was just a succession of trans characters, drag queens, and a denouncement of capitalism, which came when they ended up in an area surrounded by landmines, which had lights on them. Why are there lights on the landmines? Capitalism, barked back the assistant. It's crazy stuff.
I'm just trying to work out that connection. Lights on landmines, capitalism. But I take your point.
Apparently, it made them more sellable. If you put a light on a landmine, I would have thought it rather gave the game away that there was a landmine there. But
yeah. The great thing about these landmines is everyone will know where they are. Yeah.
What do I know?
Yeah. So okay,
I must not stand on the march of progress with the BBC.
Yeah. So
which is something to behold.
But it does look as if this, because this has been going on for years now, hasn't it? You know, I remember when I was still doing your job, as it were, for the Sunday Mirror, and watching, you know, one of the banes of my life, worse than having to watch The X Factor, was having to watch Doctor Who, and I don't say that lightly. I suddenly found myself watching some sort of lizard woman who was a lesbian. It was a lizard, but it was a lesbian or something. I mean, I just thought, what is all this crap? What is it?
There's an element of recycling as well, because Russell T Davies did a drama called Channel 4 with Emma Thompson, which was about a right-wing despot taking over the world.
Years and years. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It was awful, really awful. Yeah.
And within this last series of Doctor Who, there was an episode called 73 Yards, which was about a right-wing despot taking over the Earth and destroying it. So it didn't take much for people to say, hang on, you're just recycling here. It's not good enough. But quite apart from the fact it's unforgivably woke, it's also just lame and pathetic.
And I assume by extension, boring.
Yeah, you just got that deja vu feeling every time you switched it on. Say, well, what's he nicked this storyline from? Well, it's just one of his old Channel 4 dramas.
Yeah.
It's not just Doctor Who as well. I don't know if you've read the stories about Waterloo Road, which in episode 6 of the current series introduces a trans character who becomes furious, absolutely enraged with his poor dementia-driven grandmother who's got to Alzheimer's, and suddenly starts misgendering him. It's crazy stuff. Once you reach that level of indoctrination, there's almost no way back for you. You have to get rid of everything, or the institution of the BBC itself dies. because it will get rid of all its viewers, that's for sure.
This television industry, and it's not just the BBC, and
it's not.
And Doctor Who is the microcosm of what we're talking about here. The entire British television industry is destroying itself by this crazed wokery that somehow or other a few television producers and directors and people who work on these shows, executives, want to sort of tell their audience, you know, never mind you and your Neanderthal values, we're going to impose our virtue signalling halo polishing on you, and you're going to like it. And it turns out they don't like it. So it looks to me as if Nakati Gatwa is about to quit. He's seen the writing on the wall, and it looks as if this may mean that time is running out for the Time Lord.
Yeah, and indeed every other programme that follows suit. You would have seen it as well with the BAFTAs on Sunday, which is in many ways the epicentre of woke, where it's compulsory to joke about Donald Trump. But if anyone told a joke about Vladimir Putin or Hamas or Hezbollah or Kim Jong-un, they would have been told they were being a bit inappropriate. It's the hypocrisy, the stench of it, and this groupthink, which is the exact opposite of creativity. It destroys everything it touches, which is why the BAFTAs was watched by a lot less people than a repeat of Antiques Roadshow.
Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, it got absolutely clobbered by a repeat of the Antiques Roadshow, because people are just fed up with this.
But you know, I meet people in the TV industry, and they say exactly what we're saying. Oh, we're killing ourselves with all this stuff. So it's almost like a force within itself, this impulse to wokery, that a lot of people involved in imposing it on an unwilling audience know that they're committing commercial suicide, and yet they're compelled to carry on. What's that all about?
Well, they're just following orders, aren't they? It's classic stuff. No one takes responsibility for this. No one out there will ever put their hand up and say, I invented pronouns. I started all that, cobblers. It was me that got you to put him on the end of an email, because it's most clearly a crazy idea that absolutely engages with no one other than the just terminal doormats and people that would go, want to be seen to be part of the ruling group. It's pitiful.
It is. But it's getting worse and worse and worse. They don't seem. I think a lot of people in the television industry recognise this malaise, recognise this suicidal tendency that they have to alienate their audience, and yet don't seem willing to do anything about it.
No, well, it's their funeral. They will go down with the ship. I mean, you could watch something like The White Lotus, made in America, which makes lots of serious points about consumerism, greed, capitalism, all the rest of it, but does it so subtly and beautifully compared with British television, which just whacks you over the head with a mallet and this stuff. It's like being slapped around the face with a rolled-up copy of The Guardian, 24 hours a day on British television.
Let me tell you where this all ends up. This is not about television. This is a film. It's called The Conclave. It's all about the Pope, the internal politics at the Vatican. I'm not going to spoil the ending for anybody, but if you watch that movie, the ending is the end of everything. It is the wokest, craziest thing you've ever seen in your life, and that just cleaned up with all the BAFTAs and will clean up with the Oscars. Tell you what, they're all going to hell in a handcart, and good luck and good riddance. Ali, fantastic to talk to you. Talk again soon. That's Ali Ross, TV critic of The Sun. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the way our politicians squander our money on woke rubbish. So much more of this still to come. Stay tuned. Straight after the news, we'll be back.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the final hour of tonight's Political Asylum. As I said earlier, it seems to be emerging as this week's woke special, the scourge of wokery, putting its nasty tentacles into every aspect of our lives. Just heard Ali Ross talking about how Doctor Who and indeed the entire TV industry seems to be killing itself with this crazed wokery that just alienates viewers and they don't tune in anymore. Obviously, we've talked about J.D. Vance essentially attacking all the EU leaders for their wokery, their woke attacks on freedom of speech, and on it goes. And of course, we learnt yesterday, and this the foreign aid and indeed our domestic aid budget. We spent £8 billion on domestic aid, 15 billion on foreign aid. All of that money is going on crazy wokery. It's ridiculous. So yesterday, of course, we learnt that the foreign aid budget, 15 billion quid, went to a study of the health of Bangladesh's shrimps. Hope they're okay. Transformative feminist funding in Iraq. Electric Porsches for Albanian prisons. Gender disinformation in Kenya. And all that other nonsense. Turns out that the Foreign Aid Committee is chaired by, who'd have thought it, Emily Thornberry. You know, that one who doesn't really like the white working class very much. Takes pictures of their St George's flags and shows her contempt for that. Now that Foreign Aid Committee's got 11 MPs on it. Guess what? 7 of them are Labour. Big surprise. Only 2 Tories, 2 Lib Dems. So it's Labour coming up with all this nonsense. And we learned today, courtesy of The Sun, it's a 2-day special on the way our politicians waste our taxpayers' money on arrant nonsense. It's a disgrace, it's a scandal. But yesterday we learned that domestically we have spent £8 billion on such important projects as a study into TikTok dancing and how it was affected by the lockdowns, research into queer animals, and AI helping firms to be trans-friendly. This money's chucked down the drain by something called the United Kingdom Research and Innovation Budget, the UKRI. Again, politicians deciding how to spend our money. So 15 billion on Bangladeshi shrimps, 8 billion on studies into queer animals. That's where our money's going, folks. Let's talk to an organisation or a representative of an organisation that works tirelessly to expose this kind of, terrible expenditure, this wanted expenditure that we shouldn't be doing. Taxpayers Alliance is the organisation and the representative. We're very pleased to welcome him into the show, William Yarwood. Hello, William.
Good evening, Kev. Thanks for having me back on the show. Great to talk to you.
Always a pleasure. Well, look, first of all, I mean, we found out yesterday, courtesy of The Sun, about where some of our money was going abroad. Worth pointing out that we have a regular foreign aid budget of £15 billion. This year, our allegedly cash-strapped Labour government increased that by £11.6 billion. So this year, what are we talking about? 27 billion odd going abroad, because they sent an extra 11.6 billion to various developing countries to help them with their green projects, whatever that means. So we know that this money is being wasted. It's never on things like irrigation systems, new schools, new roads, that kind of thing. It's on nonsense like transformative feminist funding in Iraq, on gender disinformation conferences in Kenya, and so on and so forth. So we know the direction that this money heads in, not just abroad, but abroad to woke projects abroad. So I thought we'd take this on and say, well, who the hell is it that makes these decisions about what to do with our money? Because in both terms of the foreign aid budget and the domestic aid budget, whoever is making these decisions are making terrible decisions. They are wasting our money on utter nonsense. And as I said, I looked into the Foreign Aid Committee, and guess what? There's 11 of them. 7 Labour MPs, big surprise, 2 Lib Dems, 2 Tories, and the chair of the Foreign Aid Committee is the legendary former, I think, Shadow Attorney General. That's Emily Thornberry. Now, these people on that committee, they've got some questions to answer, haven't they?
Well, certainly, Kev, they do indeed. Whether Emily Thornberry is going to answer any of them correctly, that's that's up for debate. But I think the answer is probably going to be no, isn't it? But yeah, completely. I mean, you mentioned there about it's never spent on any real things, but actually, this is money that could be spent at home on issues we have here. It could be used on the NHS, it could be used for tax cuts, it could be used for the roads, it could be used for a wide variety of things. And in terms of who makes these decisions, it's not just our politicians, it's civil servants inside of Whitehall. So you mentioned UKRI earlier, it's quangos, which have absolutely zero oversight from the British public. And actually, one interesting point I'd like to make is actually none of these aid grants and none of these research grants have ever been mentioned in any manifesto put forward by any politician in any political party, and yet they seem to go through. So actually voters don't vote for this because if they saw them in the manifestos, if MPs at election time had to stand up and say, actually, I think a great use of your cash, folks, is sending it abroad for climate projects in Uganda and Somalia, I don't think they'd get the votes that they've been getting. Do you?
No, I don't. And if we come back domestically, I mean, I'm looking at a few things that this UKRI has generously handed out cash to. I mean, for example, this is £1.1 million went on storying life courses for intersectional inclusion, ethnicity and well-being across time and place. £1.1 million. Moving online, the ontology and ownership of internet dance. Pretty much £200,000, £199, £922. As I said earlier, using AI to connect to LGBTQ and arts communities. Queer natures. This is about queer animals, gay animals, animal environment and modern sexual knowledge production. What the hell does that mean? They got 250,000, £250,000. Critical dance pedagogy through discourse and practice, 78,000. And so on and so forth. It is just astonishing. It's jaw-dropping, this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, that's research re-released with The Sun, and that's just 10 examples. I mean, you listed a number there, but there's actually 10 examples we give. But that's just the tip of a very, very large iceberg, Kev. And more people are waking up to the fact that actually their money is not being used properly on the things that they care about. But actually, on a more deeper point, the reason a lot of this money goes towards those projects is because actually of the ideology that's infested within our state at the moment, which of course is the woke ideology we talk a lot about. But the reason the woke ideology continues to perpetuate itself, the reason it continues to infest every area of the public sector is because it's receiving oxygen, and that oxygen is taxpayers' cash. If you strip this money away from these research grants, if you strip this money away from these foreign aid grants, actually you'd find that a lot of these research projects and a lot of these foreign aid fundings would never get off the floor. They would never get off the floor because no one in their right mind, no normal person anyway, and there's plenty of normal people out there who do not agree with this kind of stuff, would even be remotely interested in looking into this or studying this. So quite frankly, this government's not going to do it, but if they were trying to win back any level of support, they should defund absolutely every single one of these UKR grants and defund absolutely every single one of these foreign aid grants and put this money to better use at home instead of hitting farmers, small businesses and the self-employed.
Yes, and we need really, don't we, an Elon Musk, a Doge, a Department of Government Efficiency, to drive a truck through this nonsense. And I really do think, to come back to my earlier point, I think Emily Thornberry and her committee should start to explain, you know, why it is that we have shelled out £9.5 million to the Congo for something called accountability and inclusion. £5 million on transforming feminist funding in Iraq. Yeah, how's that going, by the way? A great place for women, isn't it? £500,000 on a fleet of electric Porsches for Albanian prisons. And as I said earlier, £133,000 on shrimp health in Bangladesh. You know, when this comes across their desks and they go, oh yeah, tick, what's going through their minds? I think that these MPs, Emily Thornberry and her ilk, we're not just pointing the finger at her, they are sort of drunk on a kind of entitlement that somehow or other they've got our money, we've had to pay our taxes. Trust me, I know. I've just gone bankrupt paying my latest grotesque tax bill. We have to do all this. They don't even give us a second thought, do they? Shrimp health in Bangladesh? Yeah, off you go. They've got to explain why they're doing this. And at the very least, they've got to be stopped in their tracks from any more of this, haven't they? Because as you said, as you implied earlier, William, quite rightly, I mean, in order to save £1.4 billion, they axed the winter fuel allowance. So £1.4 billion would have kept every pensioner warm this this winter. Instead, half of them going to freeze to death because we didn't have the money. Meanwhile, we're sending £9.5 million to the Congo for accountability and inclusion. This isn't just crazy. This isn't just annoying. This is an absolute scandal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not just a scandal, actually, Kevin. I'd say it's actually pretty immoral, considering what they're doing to farmers, considering what they're doing to the self-employed, considering what they're doing to pensioners. And yet, like you said, they're funneling money abroad in this way. And you're right when they get these pieces of paper and they go tick, they are drunk on a kind of entitlement. That's not just about, oh, well, it's actually our money now. It's actually the government's money. It's nothing to do with taxpayers anymore. It's in our pocket and we're going to use it the way we see fit. It's actually their false belief that actually doing these kind of projects gives Britain soft power on the world stage, that somehow various countries are going to love us more if we give them money for trans inclusion stuff or climate aid. But actually what it proves, Kev, is that we are a soft touch, because when these countries have foreign criminals in our country, when these people are coming over on small boats into our country, we should actually be using foreign aid as a way to say, actually, in order to make sure that people don't come over here in small dinghies, in order to make sure that actually you take your foreign criminals back, is we're going to withdraw every single penny of taxpayers' cash from you, from the British public, and say no more foreign aid spending until you take your foreign criminals back, until you take your illegal immigrants back, and only then might you possibly have it back.
And why are we, for example, handing £114 million to India, the world's largest democracy, an industrial superpower, and a country that has its own space programme? Why are we giving them £114 million, do you think, William?
Delusional nonsense and soft power again. I mean, we give money to Pakistan as well, which has dubious relations with us as well. We're a soft touch, Kev, quite frankly, and our political class are obsessed, not just with the idea of going to foreign conferences and saying nice things about how much they've invested in climate projects in the third world and so on and so forth. But what they should care about is Brits at home, because that is the duty of politicians, isn't it? It's to look after the people in your own country first, not the world. And to be quite frank with you, these people need to be brought to heel, because this stuff is only going to get worse.
And do you happen to know who makes these decisions on the part of what I've discovered only today is called the United Kingdom Research and Innovation Department, UKRI. I mean, that's our money, and that organisation somehow spreads it around, to fund important studies into TikTok dancing and how that was affected by the COVID lockdowns. I mean, who makes those decisions?
Well, UKRI is actually another quango. That's right, it's another quango. It's an unelected group of bureaucrats deciding where the money should go. But of course, it's not their money; it's taxpayers' money, and they don't really care because they're a non-governmental organisation with only a little bit of reach from the Department for Education. So quite frankly, UKRI actually needs to be brought back into the Department of Education, completely scrapped, and every single bureaucrat in there fired, because what they're doing is they're wasting millions upon billions of pounds of taxpayers' cash on useless woke projects that have no place in our society.
Yeah, let's get that straight. You and I, we the last 20 minutes or so, we're not talking about millions of pounds. We're talking about billions and billions of pounds. 15 billion on our normal foreign aid budget. A lot of people would say in this time of cost of living crisis, people struggling to get by, why on earth are we sending any money at all abroad? But that's 15 billion. And this year, of course, our cash-strapped government, we've got no money, financial black hole, 22 billion. 11.6 billion quid across the water, send it to some developing countries, for what? Green stuff. Oh, yeah. So 27 billion this year, 8 billion at home. These are mega amounts of money, of our money, and these politicians, these MPs, these committee chiefs, these committee members are squandering it on abject nonsense.
Yeah, completely. But it's not just the politicians here. It's the civil service. It's the wider public sector, which is infested by this kind of woke ideology. And actually, you need to do a big clear them out of them all, in my opinion. You need to get rid of a lot of them. And you mentioned Elon Musk's Doge there. If the government's interested in getting rid of a lot of this spending, they can just call the Taxpayers Alliance up.
Yeah, indeed. Well, thank God we got you lot, William. Seriously, great work on all of this because the public has a right to know. And I just hope that the fury with which this nonsense has been met on the part of the public, bears some fruit, that we are rewarded by a more sensible system, that hopefully the politicians will see that now that we know about this stuff, it just is not acceptable. We are not going to let you do this anymore. I fear, however, they'll probably try and just trundle on doing their nonsense. But you never know. And great work by you guys. And thank you so much for coming on. William Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance. What do you think? These people, they're taking our money and doing this, So when you write your huge checks to pay your cash, your tax, remember this. Some of it's going towards a shrimp health in Bangladesh. So there you go. Worth paying your taxes for that, isn't it? What do you think about all this craziness? How are we going to get these idiots, these half-wits in Westminster into check? How are we going to pull them into line? Stop wasting our money like this. And so, stop saying, we've got to save £1.4 billion. If that means a few pensioners freeze to death, so be it, but we've got to save money. £9.5 million for an intersectional conference in Colombia. Go right ahead. Yeah, no problem there. This is insane. It is so mad. And as William said, I think it's immoral and it is a scandal. What about our own people? Spend our money on us. Just a thought. What do you think? 03444991000. We'll go to break now. When we come back, you got the rest of the show. It's all yours. The lines are open. 03444991000. Let me know what you think about everything we've been discussing. Mainly is wokery. But this last item, the crazy amount of money we're spending on shrimps in Bangladesh, Porsches for Albanian prisons, TikTok dancing classes, studies into how the COVID lockdowns affected TikTok dancing. Your money going on that. What do you think about that? 03444991000. Stay tuned.
Well, Keir Starmer is a desperate Prime Minister in search of a good war, knowing entirely well that it is a completely fake proposal. Keir Starmer knows completely well that you can't send some kind of raggle-taggle gypsy crew of willing volunteers from around Europe to go to Ukraine to, as he puts it, be peacekeepers, because there's no structure within which to do that. Right. Who would command them?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We'll go to the phones in just a little while. I don't know if we've got any WhatsApp voice notes. If we have, I will play them. And I played Meghan Markle's video earlier announcing that it's no longer American Riviera Orchard. It's as ever. And Nicola from Norfolk's come up with maybe a better, more appropriate name. She says, I think a more appropriate name for Meghan Markle's brand would be Whatever. This is from Ernie about that guy Mohammed Hoblos, the hate preacher who, as far as we know, could well be appearing on stage in London tomorrow night. He says, Ernie says, if Hoblos does speak at one of these shows, well, I think the idea is he speaks at all of them, all 5. I hope we have someone watching him, and if he repeats what he said in those videos, he's arrested and charged straight away like the people of Southport and given the same choice, plead guilty or get a longer sentence. Yeah, if he... I don't approve the hate speech laws, but, if he breaches the hate speech laws, just like they do anyone else, as Mike Neville said, if he was a Millwall fan, they'd have him clapped in irons within seconds. But he's not, so I think he might get different treatment. But good idea. And Chloe in Hampshire says, I'm thinking security service now have a lovely list of all the hate preachers followers from the ticket sales. Maybe they all need a knock on the door. It's arguable what they've done wrong. I mean, you can buy a ticket for this. I mean, that is if the performances actually happen. I say performances. I mean, what do you got? The sermons, is it? I don't know. Whatever that is, it's all showbiz, folks. He's making 10 quid a ticket. That's the main thing. What else we got? This is Rob talking about the picture of Axel Rudiger-Barmer as an angelic choir boy. As your guest speaker said, that evil photo was taken immediately in custody. I can't get the image out of my head of the poor little girls making bracelets. God bless them. Good point, Rob. Good point. It just doesn't bear thinking about, and the police tried to be nice to him. Tried to make us think better of him. Look, there's a picture of him as a little schoolboy, nice choir boy. Why? He was 12 years old when that picture was taken. They had a mugshot. Why didn't they release that? Really want to know why. Ray Mitchell suggests, is it possible that the police produced the mugshot as a joke? No. No. Even the police wouldn't be that tone deaf to start making jokes in those circumstances. I just think it was to make us feel better about Axel Rudiger-Barmer, who just slaughtered 3 little girls to death, and by the way, injured 8 other people very, very badly. So why would the police want us to think better about him? I don't know. 03444991000. Steve Chandler says, when Starmer said about putting boots on the ground, did he mean Angela Rayner's brothel creepers? She's, of course, in Ethiopia. Nobody knows why. She's the housing minister. Apparently it's important government business that she should be in Ethiopia. I gather the sun's shining there, probably very nice weather. I bet she's in a nice hotel. I hope she's having a lovely time. And Alison says, instead of being a bridge, I think Starmer is the pig in the middle. I like pigs, but not one made by a tool. And Stuart says there's a 1% chance Keir Starmer is a woman and his or her wife is a man, according to his or her own definition of a man and a woman. Yeah, good point. Just absolute nonsense. So Greg in Lincoln says that me and Rod need our own show, even a tour. I'd buy tickets. Magnificent. Keep taking the tablets. By the way, all of you tuned in, Rod was a bit dark. There was a bit of a lighting issue, but we're more interested in what he has to say than what he looks like. So sorry if he was a bit dark, but in what he was saying, as usual, sharp as a pin, right on the money, I thought. Anyway, let's go to the phones. Let's take a quick call before we go to break. Let's talk to Philippa, who wants to talk about wokery. Hello, Philippa.
Hello, I am right on the money as well, because I think that the way television channels portray our history, depicting historical people who actually existed with this colourblind casting, I think it's wrong. Think about Queen Charlotte, who was portrayed.
Yeah, that was in. Was that in Bridgerton? Yeah,
Bridgerton.
yeah.
And think about Anne Boleyn.
Anne Boleyn, the Channel 5 series of that name, yeah. Anne Boleyn, played by an actress of colour. I mean, yes. Just ridiculous. It's just my point on it, Philippa, is you say it's wrong. I mean, it isn't. It's an artistic choice. It isn't technically wrong. But I think for people like you and me, certainly for me, and I think you might agree, it's not for me to say whether or not casting Queen Charlotte as a person of colour is right or wrong. All I can say is, as a consumer of the drama, as someone watching it, for me, the drama dies stone dead at that point. I just look at that and think, well, that's not realistic. Queen Charlotte wasn't a person of colour. Anne Boleyn was white, not black. Yeah. And after that, I find it very, very difficult to be engaged. It just loses me. That's my problem with it.
Yeah, it's not credible, and I'm a historian, and yes, it's okay to take historical license with certain things to make it dramatic, for dramatic purposes, but to completely portray somebody as somebody they weren't, from sources we can see, from paintings, we know from history and articles and the archives and everything, that these people weren't of colour. They just wouldn't have been in those positions of power at that time. So I just think that it maligns our English history so much. And it doesn't, if you've got younger viewers watching it, they're going to think, well, why is Anne Boleyn black? She wasn't black.
It's certainly, it's a good point. I mean, if nothing else, if kids watch it, it will confuse them historically. But as I say, for me, I personally, if I was producing one of these dramas, I'd say, well, let's make it as realistic as possible. Let's make all the characters be played by actors, who could be those characters. And once you choose an actor of colour to play an historical character who was white, or the other way round, for that matter, you kind of spoil it, don't you?
It would be like a white actor playing Malcolm X.
Yeah, but you never get that. You never get it the other way round, do you? I absolutely agree with you. And I mean, Bridgerton. I personally find Bridgerton unwatchable on a number of levels, but the colourblind casting just makes it a no-no for me. It's just like, this is ridiculous. This can't possibly be, 17th, 18th century England. It can't be. This is nonsense. Exactly. It just looks ridiculous. So I'm with you all the way, Philippa, but I sense that there's a kind of producer in television today. The first thing they do when they get a script is Now, what actors of colour can I cast in white roles? That's what they want to do first up and say, look at me, colourblind casting. Well, good luck with it, but it ruins it for me and it ruins it for you, Philippa, and I think we've got a point. Good to talk to you, really good point. Thank you very much for ringing. Please call me again. Philippa in Dorset, what do you think about colourblind casting? As I say, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. It's up to the people creating these dramas. But for me, it just ruins them, and it did for Philippa too. What do you think? 03444991000. We've got a break, come back with more of your calls, more of your messages. Stay where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. As we speak, Donald Trump is at Mar-a-Lago giving a press conference, media conference. He's talking about these Ukraine peace talks, which of course have been unfolding with just America and Russia in Saudi Arabia. We did hear Zelensky was going tomorrow, but that appears to be off now. Now, Donald Trump is talking about the European leaders being fed up that they're not involved. He basically says, well, you can suck that up. Don't care. We'll handle this. And he's saying that after the talks in, well, they're still going on in Saudi Arabia, he's very confident that some kind of deal can be reached. The Russians, Lavrov, we're hearing, is saying, well, any deal will rely on Ukraine being banned from joining NATO and or the EU. And also the Russians won't have any boots on the ground in Ukraine, even as a peacekeeping force. So there goes Keir Starmer's bold pledge to send our boys over to that Eastern European country. So interesting times, but Donald Trump saying that he has no regrets not inviting any of those useless, squabbling EU losers to the peace talks. If he did, they'd get nowhere. As I said earlier in the show, those guys couldn't agree on the day of the week. They really couldn't. Olaf Scholz storming out. I find this irritating, and storming out because Starmer wants to put boots on the ground and he doesn't. And by the way, all this, we have been so wonderful towards Ukraine. Well, we didn't go in and help them, did we? We just sent them money. And weapons. Okay. That was quite a lot of aid. But, our unequivocal support didn't stretch to us going over there and fighting with Ukraine, did it? So let's not go overboard with how wonderful we've all been, right? Now, let's go to the WhatsApp voice note, shall we? We've got one from Claire on Kemi. Take it away, Claire.
Evening, Kevin. WTF is Kemi talking about? Her party returning to liberalism and its values. She's supposedly a conservative, but maybe she should join Ed Davey on his roller coaster ride into obscurity in his fun, fair fantasy land.
I love Claire. Another great WhatsApp voice note from Claire. Fantastic stuff. She's absolutely right. Kemi Badenoch, the woke mind virus. Well, you lot started it. David Cameron, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, Rishi Sunak, all allowed this woke virus to infect this nation, and now it's killing us. And she goes, oh, we've got to stop this, we've got to stop this. Well, you shouldn't have started it, should you? It's just another thing she's going to have to beg the British people for: forgiveness. Forgiveness for the migrant crisis and forgiveness for the woke mind virus. And I don't think that forgiveness is forthcoming. Hence, as Tim Montgomery said earlier in the show, I think the Conservatives are screwed. I think they may be finished. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Colin in Rugby. Hello, Colin. You want to talk about the ECHR?
Yeah, basically, I agree with Tim Montgomery that it would be very difficult for a reform government, if it's elected, to get anywhere unless there is a complete clear out of all the Tony Blair rubbish, and the ECHR and all the rest of it. It's very, very important that we have a referendum to create a Senate-like body, and that Senate-like body deals with the pay of senior civil servants who would run fixed-term contracts, and also have an influence on the selection of and confirmation of judges. Otherwise, you can't make much progress, really.
Well, we need a system by which we can punish judges, we can sack them, or reprimand them, because at the moment, such is our reverence for our judiciary, the marvellous judges who sit on these benches, that we literally in this country have no mechanism to punish judges when they make terrible decisions, like that recent family court judge who made that brilliant decision to allow the father of Sarah Sharif, that poor little 10-year-old girl, custody of his daughter, and he went on to systematically torture and kill her. He had a long record of violence, and the judge made that decision. We can't do anything about it. The judge should be sacked for that decision. But we have no mechanism. We're supposed to just unquestionably look up to judges and just say their wisdom is incontrovertible. Well, we've seen these judges in these tribunals, these immigration cases, these immigration tribunals, and their wisdom is non-existent. They're morons. They're left-wing morons. And yet we can't reprimand them, we can't punish them, we can't say that decision is ridiculous, you are hereby off the bench. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think if judges were selected according to common sense through a sort of Senate-like confirmation thing, a lot of these people would never get on the bench.
Who would be on the Senate, though, Colin?
Oh, it would have to be a directly elected body, and.
Yeah, but then we'd start. I mean, I take your point. Yeah, I think you made a good point. But if you start coming up with new elected bodies, then the people on your Senate would be criticised as well. People say who elected them, who punishes them. You can keep going down this rabbit hole of democracy, more and more representative people running the country, but it doesn't necessarily get us anywhere. I think we just need mechanisms by which we can punish judges, and for that matter politicians who decide to send out money for the health of shrimps in Bangladesh.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but we've got to have some mechanism to control the bureaucracy, and I agree with what you're saying there, but we do need some kind of proportional representative body instead of the House of Lords. And I kind of quite like that idea. I mean, you think we need a sort of elected American Senate. That's not... Yeah, I quite like that idea. I certainly don't like the House of Lords. It's ridiculous. It's an insult to this country. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of lateral thinking we need, Colin. We need a new system in this country because the way things are going, it just ain't working out. Colin, really good call. Thank you for calling. Call me again. Colin in Rugby. Oh, well, it's that time. It's Tarquin time. Hi, Tark.
Get Kevin, what a brilliant show. Yet again, I can't believe that we're really nailing all the issues of the day. That really...
I get you on every night. I get this kind of unabridged praise. You know?
Well, I just can't believe that after years of listening to the so-called mainstream we finally got the bridgehead we needed, to use Nigel's parlance, to get through. And you're at the vanguard. So hats off to you, Kevin.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, mate. Seriously.
Mike, this morning, did you hear? I don't know if you were still. You probably had to catch up on your kit last night.
No, I usually listen to Mike.
Did you hear him take apart that lawyer guy?
Well, that's why Chris Dorr comes on, so we can take him apart. He doesn't believe in prison.
Well, did he not sort of summarise what you've been describing?
I'll tell you what was really weird about it, Tart, was that, yes, it was brilliant. I mean, and I've heard Mike argue with Chris Dorr before. In fact, I don't, that is but far from the first time Mike's kicked him off his show. He's like a turkey at Christmas. He keeps coming back for more punishment. But what struck me about their conversation is Mike said, oh, well, what do you think about these new prison rules and terms and laws? And he starts going, well, Donald Trump, Elon Musk. It's like, hang on, who brought Donald Trump up? He's a self-confessed sex offender. It's like, hang on a second, mate. You know, I think, shall I send the men in white coats round? What's wrong with you? So it was just left-wing diatribe,
doesn't that typify the problem that we're facing?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does.
Oh. I mean, just on another point, I think we desperately need to watch very carefully how Elon Musk and the Departments of Government Efficiency get on for the next 4 years and emulate as much as we possibly can in order to strip back the blob and strip them back to basics like we need to do.
Yeah,
you know?
we need an Elon Musk and we need a Doge, a Department of Government Efficiency.
We've got you, Kevin.
Well, I'm not a Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, if
You're better than that.
You know the way that Elon Musk has driven a truck through excess spending in Washington. Well, if you give me the job here to get rid of Westminster, to do the same with Westminster, I will literally drive a truck through it because it will be fun. But seriously, Tarquin, I've got to go to break, but always a pleasure to talk to you. Keep on calling. Tarquin in London. Before we go to break, actually, let's listen to Ray. He wants to talk about the woman mugshot, the mugshot terrorist who police re-released a picture of her wearing a niqab so you couldn't see her face. Take it away, Ray.
Kevin, don't you think it's possible that this mugshot was released as a joke? Because I'm a retired policeman and I'd have done it as a joke. I wouldn't have taken it seriously at all.
Well, Ray, it's a nice thought, but let me tell you 100% that was not a joke. If you know anything about West Midlands Police, you will realise even more that was not a joke. They were deadly serious. West Midlands Police are one of the wokest forces, one of the wokest constabularies in this country, and most of them are woefully woke. So they are the worst of the woefully woke in West Midlands. So that was not a joke. Let's go to break. When we come back, more of your calls, more of your messages, and I think we've got a couple more WhatsApp voice notes. So much still to come, and then Petri Hoskin will be in a few minutes to tell you what she's got lined up for your entertainment from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. So stay tuned.
Well, Keir Starmer is a desperate Prime Minister in search of a good war, knowing entirely well that it is a completely fake proposal. Keir Starmer knows completely well that you can't send some kind of raggle-taggle gypsy crew of willing volunteers from around Europe to go to Ukraine to, as he puts it, be peacekeepers, because there's no structure within which to do that.
Right.
Who would command them?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A couple of messages about colourblind casting. Brian has pointed out something that I did know, but I'd forgotten. I'd probably deliberately forgotten it, but it is ridiculous. Brian quite rightly says, re-colourblind casting. The BBC are making a drama about the Battle of Hastings in 1066. One of the main Anglo-Saxon characters and a friend of King Harold Warlords is to be played by an Afro-Caribbean actor. There you go. So black people at the Battle of Hastings? I don't think so. Here's Lisa in Hertford. She says, I watched 20 minutes of Bridgerton and I thought it was ridiculous. If I'm watching a historical drama, I don't want my intelligence insulted, thanks. Well, you know, I agree. I mean, I don't know if it insults my intelligence. It just makes it impossible for me to watch. I just think this is ridiculous. It's just not. It's not authentic. It's not plausible. So it doesn't work for me. Works for some people. Doesn't work for Lisa. Doesn't work for Philippa, wasn't it, that I talked to earlier? So endorse it. Let's go. Let's do a quick. The last of the WhatsApp voice notes. This is Steve again on the mugshot terrorist.
Here, Kev, the terrorist dinner lady with the mugshot with the niqab on. Imagine back in the 70s, a bank robber having a mugshot on with a woman's stocking over his head out of something like the Sweeney or something. Could you imagine that in them days? Blimey.
Which is a good point, isn't it? It's like releasing a picture of a bank robber still wearing his mask, or her mask, I should say, his or her mask. So anyway, that's the picture of that lady, so you can see her any old time. Very distressing for her, the terrorist who wanted to take her kids to the Middle East so they could die in the horror created by ISIS. So really distressing for her. I really, really care just how distressed that woman is. What the hell? You know, if she's distressed, good. Right, let's go to Georgina in London. Hello, Georgina.
Hello, good evening to you. I've got 2 quick points to make, if that would be allowed.
Yes, keep it quick as you can, though, Georgina. Go on.
The first point is the poor girl who was attacked by a woman. I am absolutely traumatised. I can imagine if you were attacked by a woman, the last thing you would expect to be confronted with is a male appendage. I know if that had been me, I would have most definitely made my escape post-haste and run faster than Usain Bolt at the last Olympics.
Well, yeah.
The second,
yeah.
Which I
good
think
point,
is
by the way. Good point. Second point.
The second point is this wokery that's going round everywhere all over the world. This is a reason that President Trump didn't want the EU wokery around him.
Yes.
While he was desperately trying to reach a peace agreement between Russia and the Ukraine. After watching that German politician burst into tears because J.D. Vance had said some hurty words, could you imagine the hysteria that would be caused if these individuals were exposed around a negotiating table with 2 of the most powerful men in the world, both with the testosterone of a bull elephant? You know, keep the wokery out of politics. We don't need these people to cry as a river. We need for them to do the jobs that they are very well paid to do.
Yeah, that's sobbing German. It's like, what's the matter with you? Yeah, stop being so pathetic and stop being so weak. That's exactly what J.D. Vance was talking about. And Keir Starmer's contention, but apparent belief that what J.D. Vance didn't apply to him and Britain, I don't know where he's got that idea, because J.D. Vance was pointing directly at London and directly at Keir Starmer's wokerati. You're exactly right, Georgina.
Well, they've had 3 years to get the ball rolling on this situation, and now that Donald Trump has actually took the reins on this, they all want to jump on the resolution bandwagon. Keir Starmer needs to keep his nose out of that business. The only thing he could do of any relevance there is take in the refreshments. That's it. He needs to stay at home and look after the people of the UK. Yeah. He needs to do his job here before he even contemplates going elsewhere and trying remedying solutions elsewhere.
Yeah, totally right, Georgina. But also, don't forget, he's acting like, he's the go-between, the bridge between America and Europe, that somehow or other he's involved in these talks about Ukraine peace. Well, he's not. The people in Washington, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, regard Keir Starmer in exactly the same way as they regard the rest of those weak, useless, dysfunctional EU leaders, that he's a woke idiot, and they have nothing but contempt for him. So he can play the international statesman, he can play soldiers if he likes, even though he hasn't got any soldiers, but we know the truth. He's just irrelevant. He doesn't matter to Trump, and he doesn't matter to Russia, and he doesn't matter to Ukraine. That is the way it is, Georgina. Really good call, some good points there. Thank you. Call me again. We've got time, yes. Let's go to Chris in Cambridgeshire. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Kev. Very quick one.
Yep.
If you've got a Ford Anglia and you change the headlamps and you fit a new front bumper, you've still got a Ford Anglia.
Yeah, go on, explain.
I don't need to, surely.
Well,
you know what I mean? It's a man is still going to be a man.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Absolutely. My point about trans women, trans men, knock yourself...
Let them believe what they like.
Yeah, knock yourself out. Live your life exactly how you want to.
They are still...
They're male. The trans women are male. Now, I don't, wear a dress... live your life as a woman. That's great. That's great. Do not demand that I accept that you are biologically female, because that's scientifically not true. So at that point,
they stick to your own toilets.
Yeah, that too. Absolutely, that too.
The other thing, by the way, Kev.
Yeah.
Starmer is loving the idea of the Ukraine. It's given him something else to talk about, because he's got nothing at home.
He's postulating. He's acting on the world stage. He thinks he's acting like he's crucial to these talks. He's not in these talks.
He's important about something.
He's not in these talks because he's excluded. Because the Americans and the Russians think he's like the rest of the European losers, just a woke idiot. It's as simple as that. Listen, Chris, got to move on, but very good call. Thank you very much. Mark Spencer sent me a thing that said, Google Queen Charlotte and you will see that she was a black woman. No, she wasn't. Right, let's go to... it's unbelievable the way people start to believe this rubbish. What next? Anne Boleyn was black? Really, Mark? We want to Google that? Right, let's go to a new caller. I always like a new caller. David in Exeter. Hello. Are you in? Yes, you are in Exeter. Hi.
Kevin, how are you?
How you doing, mate? What would you like to say?
Right, just this German diplomat that was sobbing his eyes out. It just so happens to be the same German diplomat who was laughing and berating President Trump when he was calling out Germany in particular for buying and being addicted to Russian energy and Russian gas.
Yeah, this guy also, he was the German ambassador to the United Nations. Now, if anyone spends any time around the United Nations, it's likely to infect them, to pervert them towards some kind of crazy left-wing ideology, because the United Nations should be disbanded. It's run by an absolute idiot, a communist called Antonio Guterres, a Portuguese extreme socialist. It is the epicenter of world wokery. This is the guy that said, no, don't use the term global warming anymore. It's global boiling. Nothing is boiling because of a global warming. It's ridiculous. That is the United Nations for you.
Stoff Hugerson, may not have pronounced his name correctly there, but he
doesn't matter.
Sat next to a German foreign minister, Heiko Maas, as well. So one thing we've got to consider with these guys is, on the one hand, we've got this ridiculous thing of him crying about J.D. Vance saying, get your act together and step up and be prepared to fight. But this is the same gang of people that are attempting to get common European defence procurement for ammunition.
Yeah, they want a European army. How useless would that be? Listen, David, absolutely, I totally agree with you. That German idiot crying, what a tosser. David, thanks very much for a great call. David in Exeter, and in the studio, it's Petri Hoskin. Hello.
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 Good evening. Do you think we should be allowed to sue
Sorry,
the
your
NHS?
Microphone was doing something strange.
Is
there.
it?
It's all right now. It's okay now.
I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
It was
It
him.
wasn't me. No, it's you. Go on. What have you got on your show?
I'm talking about the NHS. Should we be allowed to sue the NHS? Because £3 billion in compensation has been paid out, and that has doubled in a decade. Now,